Thank you very much. Item number 2 is the approval of tonight's agenda.
I would like to make a motion to move item 6A, the community ed celebration up, so that it falls right behind 5A. It would be 5B on the agenda.
Thank you very much. So there's a motion on the table to move the celebration for community ed, which I believe is our community ed dancing troupe, to fall in line with celebrations under student achievement following the celebrations from Reams. So there's a motion.
Second?
Thank you so much. And any further discussion? All right, seeing none. So I have a first by Jamie Hillstrom, a second by Jenny Nealon. With no more discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Then the question at hand then is for approval of tonight's agenda with the change of order as just motion or moved.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you, Ms. Hillstrom. And a second?
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Nealon. Any further comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Next item is public comments, number 3. And we do have a public comment sheet. Excellent. While it's coming over, I will read a statement. Thank you so much. Public comment at each regular school board meeting is an opportunity for residents of the Rockford Area School District to address the board. After being recognized by the chair, each individual will identify themselves and the group they represent, if any. To ensure that all individuals have a chance to speak, speakers will be limited to 1 3-minute presentation. The public comment portion of the regular school board meeting is not a time to debate an issue, but for the board to hear comments from community members. It is important to remember that the board has a legal responsibility to protect the rights to privacy and due process for all employees and students. This means that both district policy and Minnesota law prohibit public disclosure of matters that involve private data about students or employees, even without naming the student or employee in open session. This prohibition includes public comment portion of a school board meeting. The board values and respects input on matters of concern, but when they involve particular students or employees, such input must be heard and addressed by the appropriate school personnel, such as the building principal or the superintendent, and not during an open meeting of the board. And with that, we do have one person wishing to address the board. Carrie, if you please join us.
Hello, and good evening. I'm Carrie Joseph Carlson. I am a parent of a 3rd grader and a 6th grader here at Rockford Area School. And I additionally teach at Rockford Middle School as a male teacher and at Rockford High School as an avid teacher. I am not a numbers person, but I feel compelled to focus on numbers today. 250 to 1. Since 1965, the American School Counselor Association has recommended a ratio of 250 students to 1 school counselor. While that recommendation has not changed, in over 50 years, the climate of our schools and mental health has changed in our nation. School counselors play a critical role in ensuring students get opportunities to have safe and enriching environments in school. Maslow's hierarchy of needs explains that the immediate needs of an individual must be met before an individual can consider any other needs. If physiological needs, safety needs, and need for love and belonging are not met, all others will be stifled. A student experiencing toxic stress, mental health crisis, or even in just a fight with friends or siblings is likely not able to focus on math or reading lessons. With that in mind, I urge you as a school board to hire to the needs of our students. We have 574 students at Reams currently, 504 students at Rockford Middle School currently, and 474 students at Rockford High School. The numbers tell us what needs to be done. With only 1 counselor in each building, fewer needs of students are able to be met. Additional counselors in each building provide the opportunity to unroll character development curriculum, meet students for short-term counseling, pair students with outside mental health counseling, identify at-risk students, and collaborate with teachers to ensure the safety and well-being of our students. With a lower student-counselor ratio, important relationships are able to be established, such as this year. Students were paired with opportunities for extracurricular activities based on strong knowledge of their strengths. These opportunities provided a purpose that helped curtail behavioral issues and encourages students to make better choices. Counselors provide essential services in our schools, and limiting counseling staff also limits resources and intervention opportunities, leaving the remaining staff overburdened and students without the support they need. While I'm not numbers focused, I recognize the importance of these numbers, and this year we were able to provide one counselor for every 250 students here at Rockford Area Schools. 1 year of the ideal ratio is not enough to clearly see results, but it is enough to strain our staff and students significantly if that ratio is not maintained. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have one additional, Kelly Miller.
Thank you, sorry for the lateness. Thank you, members of the board, for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Kelly Miller, and I currently live in Rockford. I have a stepdaughter at Rockford High School and a son starting in pre-K at Reams next year. I have been a lifelong community member, I'm a current staff member, and as an alumni of Rockford Schools, I know the importance of having support as a student. I'm here tonight to share my thoughts on the importance of having additional counselor services in our schools. Our counseling program plays a crucial role in our students' lives, providing care, advice, and leadership on in-school matters and out-of-school life. These program staff support students in many other ways as well, such as providing supervision in the hallways or over lunch, and working through scheduling to ensure students have the classes, schedule, and opportunities that they need to succeed. One counselor is simply not enough in each school, as mental health support and services provide so much more than just a listening ear in schools. Having more than one person in each school provides opportunities like sending a counselor on the overnight trip to Deep Portage for 6th graders, which can be a very difficult time away from family and home for some students. Our staff is very much stretched thin with responsibilities to support our students as is, and having only one counselor per building would be extremely detrimental to our students. In today's world, many students have so much more to worry about than just getting their math or science homework done. There are mental health, family, or other life issues weighing heavily on our young people. And if we don't have the counselor support to help them work through their thoughts and emotions, how can we expect them to focus on MCA tests and school projects? I have seen students spend an entire class period crying for things that we may consider minimal, but to them it's very important and they need those mental health professionals to help them through that. With the reduced program staff, how many students would be underserved when so much time is committed with one single student? While I was a student at Rockford, I leaned on counselors to help me work through bullying and friend issues. Young people now are subjected to influence from their peers, the internet, social media, and the families at home, and now more than ever, young people need help working through their and understanding of the world around them. Our counseling program supports our students in becoming better academic students while also helping them become better human beings. Cutting the number of counselors in our schools will hurt our students by removing desperately needed support, energy, and supervision in our buildings. Please consider providing for these additional counseling and mental health services at each building, giving our students access to the services and support that they need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just checking in, no more comment? Very good. That will then bring a close to tonight's public comment session. Item number 4 is the consent agenda. The consent agenda has been provided to you in your packet, and I would appreciate a motion to move the consent agenda forward.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Thank you, Ms. Praska. There's first, a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor to approve the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll then move into item 5, high student achievement with our Reams celebration. Ms. Niles.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to share a little bit, just an introduction before folks start here. we often talk about a bias that we have, and I have one, and I thought I'm going to share with you tonight. Every 3 years, we go through a review and reflection with Northwest Suburban. And one of the gentlemen that has been in our school many times in my 17 years at Rockford is Mike Hyatt. And Mike said to me at one of our previous review and reflections, he said, "Brenda, you know I used to teach band at Purridge, right?" I said, "I know." And he said, "Now I run all over the country and I evaluate arts schools. You know you have the best art teacher in the country, right?" I said, "I know." And I'm very biased about my art program and my art teacher, and she is here tonight to share with you something that has become a tradition in our school. It is the permanent art collection piece that our students work on through our arts troupe, and it is one of the finest pieces of our school that is exciting to share, and it has become a little bit of a secret every year that they don't really even reveal to me, although I do know what's going on this year. So much so that I wanted them to come and share with you. So Sherry Weber is here tonight, my art teacher, along with several students from Arts Troupe, and they're going to share the public their permanent collection piece and just how that came about and what Arts Troupe is all about. So I'm going to turn it over to Sherry and my students. Come on up, you guys. Come on up here by your teacher. They won't bite you, I promise.
Hello, my name is Sherry Weber, and I'm the visual arts teacher at Rockford Elementary Arts Magnet School. And I'm here with our 4th grade students who would love to share what we've been working on for this year's art troupe piece. And every year we work on creating a permanent collection piece to install in our school. And our goal is at the end to look like a museum. And I have some 4th graders here that are going to tell you more about art troupe and their experiences.
I really like that if you have
Step up to the mic.
I really like that if you have younger siblings, you can always go in and try to have a scavenger hunt around the school and find all the art projects. And also it changes every year to be different, and you get to design what you want but still having other designs in it.
I think art troupe is very cool because it adds so much different color to our school, and it's super fun just to walk around the school and see some really cool art projects.
That's awesome.
Hi, my name is Henry. I like art troupe because I think it's a great way to express feelings in art. This year's project allowed me to work with a partner where I learned to listen to each other's idea that resulted in a really cool, realistic piece of art.
Hi, my name is Brianna, and I really enjoyed participating in art troupe this year. Everyone was able to create a project and express their feelings in their project. If I had the chance to do this again, I definitely would. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Hi, my name is Lola, and I like art troupe because it had a lot of things that you had the freedom to do what you want on the piece.
And so, the microphone. Yeah. So just so loud.
Yeah, so this year's piece, they took they learned about realistic painting and then created an abstraction from it. and we have about 14 pieces, so it's still developing. And then we always have the conversation, just like in a real art museum, of how is it, where will we display it, what is our purpose behind it, and how will it all come together. So it's all evolving as we speak, but we're very happy to share it. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to take questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time.
And sold a few pieces.
Before they escape, anyone have any questions for our? No?
Say great job. Come check it out yourselves.
Yes,
Awesome.
excellent.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Excellent. And then with our change of agenda item, we will ask for the celebration from Community Ed.
Say it louder. Say it louder.
They're in the hall.
Transition.
MJ, your group is ready.
Coming in.
By the way, MJ, great job on Saturday.
Yes.
The expo was awesome.
I'm still exhausted. That's a lot of work for 3 hours.
What transpires from the 3 hours.
All right, everyone. Hi, I'm Melissa Joseph, or is sometimes known as MJ as well. I'm Community Ed Director, and I'm here to introduce our Community Ed dancers, some of our dancers. I just take the registrations. This woman right here does all the work. So I'm going to let her, Miss Melanie Robran, introduce our dancers, and then our dancers will talk about their experience in our Community Ed dance program. Okay? I do, that's all.
All right, so I'm Miss Melanie, as I'm known in the studio. I just came from practice, sorry I didn't dress up for you. But I have four dancers here. I'll introduce them. The first one is Peyton. And what grade are you?
I'm in 3rd grade.
3rd grade. I'll put that mic down. You can see her or hear her, but you want to use the mic or do you want to stand in front? Okay,
Well, that works good.
here you go ahead.
My name is Peyton Byers. I am in 3rd grade. I've been in community ed dance for 3 years now. My favorite part about dance is that you get to work as a group. My favorite part about the recital is the finale at the very end when everybody gets to go out on stage and we all get respected for the hard work we did.
And next we have Tora. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tora Binsfeld, and I'm in 7th grade at Rockford Middle School Center for Environmental Studies. I just completed my 4th year of community ed dance. Plus, I have attended some summer classes. My favorite part about dance is discovering my potential and then pushing further to learn more skills. I also love performing the dances we have learned and worked hard on stage for our friends, family, and the community. In fact, I love dance so much, I plan on trying out for the Rockford dance team. Rockford Community Ed Dance is special to me because Miss Melanie makes us all feel like we are part of the dance family. Dance makes me feel happy and strong.
All right, and here's Summer.
Hi, my name is Summer. I'm in 5th grade. I have been doing dance for 8 years, and I have done 3 solos. I dance in jazz, tap, and ballet. I really enjoyed doing Rockford dance. Doing the solos made me more confident. My favorite thing about the recital is being on stage. Miss Melanie is a great coach. She makes it fun and challenges us. She is also very encouraging and fun to be around. Thank you.
All right, and finishing up for us today is Ivy.
Hi, my name is Ivy. I'm 11 years old. This is my first year doing dance. I really love to dance, and Miss Melanie made me feel really happy when I got to do dance again since I hadn't done it in a while. For the community expo, we only had 3 girls dancing for one of our classes, so we had to change up the dance a little bit, but we still had a lot of fun and enjoyed
we get a group shot?
Like,
Miss Melanie.
well, I was gonna say, and Coach
I told
Nelson.
you, it's gonna look all about her. We'll photo.
Say, do you wanna step in front of the podium? So that's, there you go, girls.
You want the school in there, the logo?
That's okay, either way.
You're geared up. Melanie, you're geared up.
There we go.
Oh, nice.
Perfect.
Thank you. The recital was awesome. The recital.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, this program goes from like the end of September all the way to March. We try to run it just like a dance studio, but a much more reasonable cost. And they still get a recital. The recital's free. And we even have adult classes for anyone interested. We went from 7 adults last year, 7 or 8, to 17 this year. And they also perform at the recitals. So
There's one here tonight.
and Miss Becca Morgan was here. She's also does it. So anyway, it's just such a great. The recital is like just such a great culmination of all their hard work. So that's what since we just had it a month ago, I wanted to bring them as a celebration for community ed. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was excellent. Item 5B is the Reams principal report. So, call you back up, please.
I get tired of seeing me tonight.
Never.
This is the final culmination, I guess, of our SIP goals. This is our third time being here, or my third time being here, and so we come in the fall and talk about what we're going to do mid-year and talk about where we're at, and now in the spring, and let you know what we've accomplished. And as I said to you last year, I think continuous improvement or SIP goals are difficult for educators, and difficult in the fact that we love to check boxes and say, and done. And you're never done. You're never done. This is always continuous. It's always improvement. It's always moving forward that we would like to do in all of our goals. So I'll let you know where we're at, and you know, obviously some of these are going to continue. We knew that moving into them this fall, that several of them would be something that we would start, and it might be several years of work. But just so you're aware, I'll walk you through kind of where we're at. So our goal number 1 was improving our educational programs and partnerships, and the actual goal is Reams staff will collaborate with EL teachers to use best practices and strategies to meet the learning needs of students who receive EL services. That is one area that we know needs to improve, and we've been working with Amanda Teagles, who is our consultant from Resource Training and Solution for several years now. She's worked really closely with our EL teachers as well as our staff, more with our EL teachers than our staff, but she's been in several times to meet with our staff and give us tips and work together with us to try and improve those strategies. So one of the things that we've had is that the EL teachers will provide a profile to teachers about each of the students in their classroom who receive EL services. So it's kind of like when special ed teachers give that snapshot of an IEP to a classroom teacher at the beginning of the year to say, this is how, you know, the background of a child and how we best service students. And so that happened this fall and was super helpful for our teachers, and will be something that we will continue. Our second action step was that EL teachers will do some push-in and some pull-out services to address student needs. That has happened, and yet it will continue to get better and better. Push-in services are not as easy as people think, because you always want to be super effective with both teachers and not have one serve as more like a para and the other teacher. And so I think we continue to tweak that and work on how we can best service our students in both areas. And so we will continue with that, and then EL teachers will co-plan with grade level teachers to help assist students that they serve. They have done quite a bit of that this year, and we'll continue that, and again, only get better and better as we move forward. So we feel really good about this goal. Our last professional development day that we had right before spring break, Amanda Teagles did join us as we were talking about reading and where we're going with reading and things that are changing up. And so she asked me, she said, do you think it would be okay if I joined you? I said, I think that would be fantastic, because how do we then also integrate how are we going to help our EL learners as we move forward in that as well. So she joined us and we had a very rich conversation right before spring break. So, so that's goal number 1. Goal number 2 is our ALICE goal, and so the REAM staff will have ongoing ALICE training, communication with families, and practice strategies with students to promote better school safety and preparedness. I feel super, super good about this goal. This has happened district-wide. I will speak to our building only, but we did a refresher right away in the fall with our entire staff. Just talk about what are those different areas look like, from shelter in place and barricade to actually being able to leave the building if necessary, talking about rally points, talking about, we got to the point where we said, okay, we've trained our staff, we've worked with our staff, now it's time to work with kids. And as I spoke to you in mid-year, we can't work with kids without working with parents first. And we were super communicative with parents along the way. I said, I'm gonna get the most phone calls and the most emails because, you know, please do this, don't scare the daylights out of my little nugget. I got 2 emails, and both emails were, thank you for doing this, thank you for doing this. And it was like, wow, that said a lot to me because I feel as though we were really communicative. The principals put a video together, we sent that out, I know you all saw it. We just did a lot of work, and as we continue to work together and as we continue to have drills, we let parents know we did do a drill today, or we are doing a drill today, just because it will eventually become what we do, but right now it's still pretty fresh. And so we've taken our students to rally points, we've worked together, our entire staff went out to our reunification site and said, okay, not only what happens if we do it here, but imagine yourself if we were in another venue. Could we still do the setup the same? Because, you know, the police might tell us, nope, we're going here. So, like I said, we've done all of those things, and now it will be continuous practice, and it's what we do. And I'm super, super proud of our staff, and I'm super proud of our district because a lot of districts are not where we're at. So that one feels a little checked off, and yet it will be continuous because we will continue to do that. Goal number 3. REAM's staff will improve support for students' learning and social-emotional learning by utilizing the MTSS process with fidelity and working to help all students feel a sense of belonging at REAM's. This is one that we've worked really, really hard on this year. The MTSS process, which is our I-team, has really been put into play quite well. We've changed that up a little bit and worked really hard with our staff to try and meet the needs of students if they're struggling in the classroom with reading or with math or with behavior, and just trying to do interventions and trying to say, how do we do this? And not, you know, literally pushing kids right through to special education, saying this is a special ed eval, because it isn't always. And so we worked really hard as a staff to prepare interventions to do that with our MTSS process. We have had staff work really hard to collaborate together and try and help students feel a sense of belonging in our school. I've worked really closely with my counselors. We've done diversity lessons. We have worked hard with, you know, just small groups trying to do a sense of belonging. And so that continues to happen. The one piece that I will share with you, we have also done second step lessons with our counselors. I will let you, I'm going to give you a little bit of data here. We've had 594 classroom lessons between our 2 counselors this year, and that is K-4. Prior to this year, we did only 1 grade level of lessons of social emotional learning, getting out in front of that, trying to help kids. How do I deal and cope with these feelings? Post-pandemic, we're seeing a lot of struggling kids, and it is not unique to REAM's, it is not unique to Rockford, it is everywhere. I even asked both of our artists in residence who are at the top of their game. They've been artists here for 12 years, they're all over the Twin Cities. I asked both Roxanne Wallace and Carla Nawaje, the last 2 that have been here, I said, can I ask you a question? They said, yeah. I said, have you seen a difference in kids just as you've been going in as an artist? And they said, oh yeah. We have kids blowing out of classrooms. We have kids throwing things at us. We have kids swearing at us. We have kids saying, why do I trust you? You're here for 3 days. And I said, and you're doing the fun stuff. And they said, yeah. They've even talked about how do we come together as an artist group and try and provide something for schools. Because they said, we're seeing it too. We're seeing it too. Individually, our counselors have seen 990 kids with individual just one-on-ones, and small group counseling, 222 groups. That's significant, and it has made a difference. I see how hard these ladies work and how much of a connection they've made. The thing I'm struggling with a little bit, and I'm just going to be honest with you and share with you as we move forward with continuous improvement, this will not be continuous, and I feel as though it will not be improvement with the counselor. It will be something that we will do the best we can to maintain, the best we can to help kids, but we will take a step back on this one. So just, I want you to be aware of that moving forward, as those lessons have been pretty significant this year. The last thing we have is PBIS strategies, which will be implemented. Building wide was one of our action steps as well, and we have worked really, really hard on that as well. Just even levels in the hallway and things like that. We walk into a full group like Lyceum in the gym, and I can say to kids, show me level 0, and everybody shuts that voice off because we've worked together on that. We've worked together in just a lot of those strategies. And that is something that we will continue to push for because just being consistent in the building really helps. So that's that goal. Moving on to goal number 4. The Reams teachers will update curriculum maps and arts maps to reflect current standards and arts-infused lessons and units. That is one that will be several years in the making. It doesn't happen overnight, and they are working on updating their curriculum maps. The tricky part of that is as the curriculum changes and the standards change, we also have to change our maps. And so we have to align that so it makes sense. So the question always is, okay, do we update our curriculum maps if we know the standards are changing in a year or two? Let's not waste our time. So we're trying to do the ones that are changing, and we're working really closely with Rob and making sure that that happens. In addition, though, as we start working with our arts mapping, Darren Eliason, my arts coordinator, has been really purposeful this year about saying, I'm going to really connect with every team and say, I don't care what you do, I don't care what your subject matter is, but I want to come in and co-teach one lesson with every single teacher in this building. And it's happening. And so it's really been fun. We've been working together with teams, and so then they'll be able to use that and start putting that into their arts mapping as they move forward. So a lot of really purposeful things happening there. And then our last goal is 100% of the teachers will increase communication about Reams as a magnet program and the children they serve. So we're always looking to say, how do we take that up a notch? How do we, tell the good story that's happening at our school? And so I oftentimes will do that before concerts. I'll do that before Grandparents' Day. I'll say to grandparents, I just want you to know what your grandchild is involved in. And I walk them through, and sometimes they go, wow, that's really cool. And then I take them through middle school and high school at a really small snapshot, just so they know K-12 what they're getting in all 3 magnet programs. We're trying to increase our social media presence. We're trying to do more things like that just to get that good news out there. There are several of us that are heading to Dallas tomorrow to go to the National Magnet Conference. I've never been in 17 years. I'm super excited to see what we can bring back to our schools, to say, wow, we learned this, or it's always those little nuggets that you can go back and say, how do we take our arts magnet school up a notch, or our STEM middle school, or so we're excited about that, and like I said, hoping to bring some things back to our school. So those are our goals, and like I said, I feel like we've done a really good job this year, but I also feel like there's, it's continuous, and we're never done. You're never done.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate you sticking with the SIP process, right? The school improvement, the strategic plan that you all put so much time and effort in. So thank you for continuing that to go through. And I'd say that you are not escaping snow, but Dallas won't have snow, right? We can't say much here, but right. Anyone have questions? No questions? Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Have
it.
fun.
Thank you.
Yes, good learning. All right, next item on the agenda. Band and choir trip, and I do see Mr. Fertig.
And Ms. Larson.
Oh, and Ms. Larson. Well, it just said Mr. Fertig presenting on here.
It's okay.
Sorry, Megan.
It's true.
Sorry, Megan.
Oh, good evening, board. Every 2 years, our choir and band programs partake in an educational tour. And a couple years ago, last year, we went down to Disneyland in California. And our proposed trip for next year, over the dates of March 22nd to 27th, would be down to New Orleans. We went down there last time in 2017. I can tell you, I've been here since '06 in the fall, and that was one of my favorite destinations to go to. The culture there, it was a great place to also perform. In your information there, there's some details about what we're going to be doing down in New Orleans if we're able to go. The performances are going to include, and one of my favorite parts about the entire trip in 2017 was we got the chance to visit in Mississippi. It was a retirement home for veterans, and we did a very patriotic themed performance there. And it not only included the performance itself, but we also had a chance to mingle with the folks that were down there and at that home as well. And it was very, very rewarding to watch that. They loved the music. It was a lot of fun, and the students as well as the people that were there got a lot out of it. Our other performance is going to be a joint, either performance or rehearsal with one of the cities or one of the schools in New Orleans. We are on the opposite side of the Mississippi River, so it's much, much different culturally up here than it is down in that area of the country. So that'll be a very, very, I think, good, wholesome thing to do with our students. We get kind of confined to our area, up here in the Scandinavia area, so for a chance for us to mingle with some students and staff down there, I think will be very, very good. Some of the other highlights of the trip, we're going to be doing a plantation tour. There's going to be a chance to go on also a swamp tour. So they'll give you a chance to see alligators and things like that as you go along this big flatbed. It's really fun. We had some students that were really into reptiles on the last trip, and they couldn't stop talking about it. They just thought that was the best thing ever. Also just the great food and atmosphere, the French Quarter. There's a lot down there to do. We're also using the same performance tour guide that we used last time, performance tours. We've been using them since I got here, and also frankly since when Mr. Voss was here. And they've been a trusted, great company. They also helped us out with our last trip when we were down in Disneyland. So again, we're here to talk about the trip a little bit, answer any questions that you might have. We're finalizing the itinerary right now, figuring out which students want to go, and then we will take it from there.
Nailed it. I'm just your moral support. I can answer questions maybe.
Excellent. Does the board have any questions for our two directors?
Is the tour over spring break, or are they missing a bunch of school?
Good question. So we actually would be leaving on the 22nd. That is actually a staff development day, so no school for kids. So technically they're not losing any time from the school day. We would be getting back on the 27th. So it would go over the first part of spring break.
Any other questions?
No, I just want to say that's a fun band trip. Have a great time.
And choir.
Hey, choir, sorry. Sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. I'm just flying the wall.
All right, so this is an item up for consideration by the board, and you've heard the presentation, so I appreciate a motion in support of the choir and band trip approval.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. There's a first. Any second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Nealon. There has been a first and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Going on a trip.
Going on a trip. Look forward to the report after.
You hear all about it.
Yes. Always look forward to it.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Bring some beignets, absolutely. All right, as we continue, move on. Letter 5D is the Director of Teaching and Learning Report. And Mr. Daniker, I know you have a couple people that are coming along with you, is that?
I do. I'll introduce them.
Chair Gordy, may I make a comment first?
Yep, before, and all I was gonna ask is before you have your guests show up, would you want to transition to a table so you all can be together, or are you okay with the podium?
That would be lovely, and thank you for the invitation. So as you're going through your statement, maybe we'll transition to a table.
All right, and Superintendent Dean had asked to be able to address the board prior to the Director of Teaching and Learning, so this is in addition to that report. So Superintendent Dean?
Thank you, Chair Gordy. Yes, I'd like to share an update with you before the next board report. This has been a challenging staffing and budgeting season as we have reached the end of our ESSER or COVID funds, which were one-time funds provided by the state to support schools with pandemic-related expenses. We utilized these funds this year or the past several years to provide technology access to our students, to address learning loss, and to offer additional social emotional support for our students by adding more counselors at each building. Unfortunately, these funds have been exhausted, which was expected. Earlier this spring, I informed the principals that we would be able to maintain the 3 counselors' positions. However, as we continue to work with the business office, for our FY24 budget, which is next year's budget, it became clear that we are not financially capable of funding 3 additional positions from the general fund. Additionally, the 5-year grant to implement the IB program at the high school is coming to an end. And our operating levy will expire in the year 2025. It is essential that we approach the next few years with a clear understanding of the financial priorities. Although our state legislators are still debating bills that will provide additional support for schools, I remain hopeful that the state will allocate funds specifically for mental health and social emotional supports for students. If and when these resources become available, we will have the necessary data to support a grant application and will aggressively seek the additional funds. So I thank you for the opportunity to address the board in this matter.
Thank you, Superintendent Dean. Appreciate that. And moving from that into the Director of Teaching and Learning's report. So, Mr. Daniker, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chair Gordy, members of the board. Chair Gordy, as you mentioned earlier, I do have a couple of guests who will be joining me in different segments tonight. So we have 3 different portions of teaching and learning report for tonight. We'll start by talking about MTSS, our MTSS update, as we complete our 2nd year of implementation of MTSS across our system in partnership with the Department of Education and also with the University of Minnesota's Carey Institute. Following that, we'll hear from our senior counselor in the school district, Ms. Molly Worth. We're making new business cards for you. And so hearing a little bit more about school counselor student support. We've heard a bit about it tonight, but we'll provide some more context. And then finally, circling back to previous conversations from previous meetings regarding our access staffing model. So that's our plan for tonight. And so our MTSS specialist, Mr. Ben Bonnet, is with me. Ben, if you come on up. And I'm going to hand it over to Ben for now.
Hi, thank you for having me tonight and talking a little bit more about MTSS. So let's get started. Just an update. Sorry about the formatting there. But one kind of a 30,000 foot overview of what MTSS is. When we think about student success, and that's our focus, that's our goal, MTS is taking all of our different resources and aligning them so all of our work goes towards that student success. So another visual is when you think of MTSS, it's all about student success. Your glasses. But it's all about student success. So when you take all those different parts up there, is making sure that our efforts and our work all go towards the same goal, which is helping our students be successful. So that's kind of the big overview picture of what MTSS is. So as Rob was saying, we've done some specific things this year to make sure that we're meeting students' needs, that their students are being successful. The first one is partnering with MDE and U of M's Carey to make sure that as we're implementing our MTSS framework, we're kind of getting the best practice and best thoughts around how we do that. So we've been a part of the cohort for now 2 years, and currently we're working with MDE on assessing our MTSS implementation at a district level. In addition to that, we created a process guide last year, and so as we have been, it's a working document, so as we've been making more improvements to our MTSS framework, we've been updating our process guide so it's current. And then the last part, Brenda talked a little bit about this, is our I-team, our child find process. We've looked at how we can be more targeted in supporting our students, whether they're doing really well in the classroom, if they need some extra support at tier 2 or tier 3. What are those supports? How can we make sure that we're targeting those interventions? Which lends itself with that last piece for if we feel like a 504 or a special referral would help meet the needs of that student, the process is more efficient and more aligned because we've been looking at what does our data say of if the tier 1 is not working, then what kind of an intervention do we have for tier 2 or tier 3? So I'll give a little bit more information for that now as we kind of look at our tiered interventions. So again, another visual, another picture of MTSS you could think of as a car. But tier 1 is all cars, all gas-powered cars kind of need those regular routine things to be successful, to successfully get us to that next destination. With MTSS, it's like that. All students are getting fantastic, rigorous education in the general ed classroom. So that's that green section. We also know that sometimes some students will need some extra supports because for different reasons they might be struggling in the classroom. So that's when tier 2 comes. So with your car, maybe it needs a little bit of attention, maybe with new tires or something like that. But again, that's in addition to the quality education that our kids are getting. Then the last one is a tier 3. So if a student is struggling with a tier 2 support and we're still not meeting their needs, what is a more intense, specialized way that we can help them? And with the car analogy, it might be a new transmission. Not all cars need that, but if that's what the need is, we can make sure that we're addressing it. So with our students, that triangle visual kind of helps understand how MTSS works. So this next visual looks at, so what does it look like in tier 1 when students are having that core instruction, and our goal is that 80%, at least 80% of our students are being successful with the classroom teacher getting what they need. And so we broke it down in those 4 different areas: behavior supports, academic supports, social emotional supports, and then the attendance supports. And then we're very specific with what does that mean of how we're supporting students in that tier. Again, knowing that maybe some students, maybe 15% about, might need a tier 2 support to be able to be more successful, to reach those grade level expectations. And so that middle row highlights the different ways that we're being responsive to helping students in those different areas. And then again, knowing that some students might struggle and need some more intensive intervention, that's that tier 3, that top portion. It's a very small percentage. Maybe about 5% of our students might need that extra layer of support. And so this visual is kind of outlining what does that mean when we're looking to support a student in a tier 3 level. So the last part now I want to do is kind of break it more into what does it mean for an actual student. So let's start with a student at Remus as an example, and this is just an example. A student struggling in math. Well, at the tier 1 level, they're being exposed to standards-based curriculum with our Houghton-Mifflin Harcourt curriculum. In that general ed classroom, the teacher's using differentiated instruction to make sure that they're meeting the needs of the students. There's a win time that they have at Reams to get that extra support. And then we're using data with each tier to see how effective these different strategies and instructional practices are. With this example, this student, they're showing that they're struggling in math. And how do we know that? With that next point, how they qualify as one or more FastBridge scores might be in that high risk to some risk category. And so based on that, then our response to that is at the Tier 2, responding through Title I math support. So our Title I math teacher at Reams uses Focus Math and MobiMax to be very specific with helping that student get an extra additional supportive math. And they meet 5 times a week, 30 minutes each time in a small group. We want to make sure that we're collecting data to see if this intervention is being effective, and so there's a bi-weekly progress monitoring with the hopes that getting this extra dosage of math support that's very targeted, that eventually the student would graduate out of Title I support. So that's a Reams example. Now for middle school, let's say our example, the student is struggling behaviorally. So in the Tier 1, what does it look like? Well, all students are receiving evidence-based curriculum. We've been starting to use Character Strong. So all students, like at Reams, they were using Second Step. At the middle school, we're using Character Strong. So all students are getting that explicit SEL instruction on how do you handle those emotions, how do we handle conflicts, how do we work with peers, that kind of a thing. In-class behavior supports that the teachers are using, again, in the general ed classroom. And we're using data to see how students how are they feeling, how are they doing with the MySaver screener. Some students might show that they need an extra support. Maybe they're struggling in some different areas with behavior. So the Tier 2 comes into play, where if they have excessive behavior referrals, we might have them be in a small support group that run by the counselors, or even meeting individually with counselors to get that extra support and guidance on how to best work with other students maybe that they're having conflict with, or deal with emotions that they have. We use the I-team process with all of this as we get into a Tier 2 or Tier 3. And if we're seeing that even with this Tier 2 support, the student is still struggling, we'll come together as an I-team and look at what is an additional way that maybe we can support the student. So that's where the Tier 3 comes into play, where the school counselor might recommend to the family to enroll in the school-based mental health services that we have available, which is phenomenal at all 3 buildings. So as the student hopefully could be enrolled in that program, they'll continue to receive the peer support group through the counselor, and as well as in the classroom, the teacher will continue to work with that student. So that's what it might look like here at Rockford for a student struggling behaviorally. And then the last example, a student at the high school might be struggling with reading. And so how do we make sure that we're meeting their needs? Again, at the Tier 1, we're looking at standards-based instruction, and then we're using a reading screener, just like we do K-10, to see how is the student doing. As well as the Rocket Block, just like with Reams and middle school, they have that time where kids can get that extra support. With this student, maybe they're showing through FastBridge scores that they need some additional support. And so we have an ADSYS person that can give support at the high school. And this ADSYS person, the intervention that they might use is rewards or FastBridge, and they might meet 5 times a week, 30 minutes at a time, and kind of a 1-to-2 instruction. And again, we're collecting data during that time to see if this intervention is being effective. And in this case, with this student, the case might be that even with these extra pieces of extra support, the student might be referred for a special education referral. So this is kind of how MTSS looks like on a huge scale, but as we go down to a specific student, this is how it might look as well. So with all that said, are there questions that you have?
Ms. Bassel.
I do have a question about this slide.
Yes.
The other slides, there were 3 tiers. At the high school, if their student is not performing at Tier 2, do they automatically move into a special ed referral, or is there a Tier 3 level of support?
Good question. So sometimes with the Tier 3, it kind of has both the general ed classroom Tier 3 support, and it might also have a special education and a Tier 3 support. It kind of is both at that Tier 3.
So that's a student that, can you clarify a little bit more, is that a student that's qualified for special ed, or they're working in tandem to maybe get some supports from the special ed teacher, but the student isn't necessarily on an IEP?
Great, again, good question. At this point, with this example, the student would not have an IEP yet. It would simply be seeing that the data is showing at these different levels, even with these specialized, intense interventions, the student is still not being able to, we're not meeting their students' needs. And so with the I-team, our job is then to look at the data to say, we feel like we've used and kind of exhausted what we can do in the general ed classroom, and so our recommendation is for a special ed referral, and then they kind of take it from there, and then we work together to see if it really makes sense, if we have the right kind of data or enough data to warrant an evaluation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All good?
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. For the second part of the teaching and learning update for this evening, I'd like to invite Molly Worth for a school counselor student support conversation.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. First of all, I want to thank you all for having me here tonight to discuss the Rockford Area Schools Counseling Department. It has been an exciting year, and I would like to take the opportunity to highlight the work and programming that has been accomplished this school year by having 6 school counselors on the team. So we have a couple slides to share with you, and on the next 2 slides we have identified, oh, jeez. As the senior counselor, I may not know how to use the technology at hand, but we're going to go for it. Look at that. Okay. So on the next 2 slides, we have identified for you our programming this school year in 2 separate categories, expanded and new. So the programs listed under expanded were in place before this school year, and we're able to not only retain this program, but we're also able to expand it in order to meet the needs and or give access to these programs to more students. For example, at Reams, I know Ms. Nyhus already spoke to this, but prior to the school year, only the 2nd graders were receiving the SEL curriculum of Second Step. And this year, all students, kindergarten through 4th grade, received the Second Step curriculum. Within this program alone, approximately 433 more students were impacted compared to just over 100 students last school year. At the middle school, in previous years, I have only been able to push into the classrooms twice a year at most, and we did not have an identified SEL curriculum in place. This year, we have pushed into the classroom 11 times, have started the SEL curriculum of Character Strong, and have been able to administer and follow up on multiple screeners for our students. As you look at the programs for both Reams and the RMS Middle School under the new category, we are so proud of everything we have brought our students to school in this school year and in the ways we have provided support for them. On the bottom of the slide, you will see categories in which we have documented hours of student support between the 2 buildings. The numbers in these categories are impactful that I had shared with you all in an email last week. However, those numbers do not include the times of student drop-ins, requests from teachers who was asking for support for dysregulated students or distressed students, and the emergencies when everything else was put on hold. So that gives you just a general idea of what has been happening at Reams and the middle school. Are there any questions about those programs? All right, let's take a look at the high school programs. The High School Counseling Office focuses on the 4 domains of the American School Counselor Association model of academic, career, social emotional, and mental health. In the fall, a survey went out to all students regarding social emotional and cultural experiences at Rockford High School. Based on the data collected, new programs and interventions were implemented. Specific interventions initiated were new outside resources or increased caseloads under Timber Bay, Public Health Nurse, Rivers of Hope, the Counseling Resource List, Safety Plan Worksheet, and Leadership and Culture Committee. An incident reporting structure was created to make students feel safe and have direct access to report issues of concern. Student-created signs and videos were published internally and externally to bring language and awareness to positive school culture. New positive behavior intervention strategies were brainstormed by students and implemented in the main office. A staff survey was sent out to gather data regarding student performance in the classroom and needs to support teachers. From the data collected, specific interventions were implemented such as behavior reflection sheet, truancy meeting template, and a follow-up survey regarding behavior analysis to continue to support staff. The counseling office has done a number of things to increase awareness for a variety of careers with the expansion of the career fair held in the fall. This year, there were over 40 career and college representatives from the 6 career clusters on the Minnesota Career Wheel. In addition, there were 3 new career pathways added for the 23-24 school year focusing on technical careers. Once everything is all said and done, because of having 6 counselors on the Rockford Area Schools team, we have been able to bring to our students a total of 66 new programs district-wide to meet the growing SEL needs as we see today. 66. As I stated in my email last week, as a counseling department, it has been exciting to bring RAS what other area schools have been able to provide their students with for 4 years, or with students for years. We are hoping to continue to grow as a proactive program for our students. And I would like to end by sharing a quote that a staff member sent to me last week. If our teens can do advanced math, speak 2 languages, and receive top grades, but they can't manage their emotions, practice conflict resolution, or handle stress, none of that other stuff is really going to matter. Thank you for your time.
Any questions from the board?
Hey, Emily, can you just, some of the programs, I don't know all of them, obviously, so they're just, so I was just really curious to learn more about both the differences between like character strong, culture of kindness, human connection, like how does all of that relate to, or is it totally separate, or is it like, do you know what I mean? Like
relate to what?
Like, are they truly different programs, or are they all kind of interconnected, or do you know? Because
Character Strong is the SEL curriculum that we had purchased this year, so that is being delivered to all of our students at the middle school. The Culture of Kindness is what Ms. Ingstrom had set up this year. These are with the students that applied to be on student council but were not voted in, so that's a separate program. So these students were given the opportunity to provide leadership in our building, but they weren't necessarily voted in for student council. The Human Connection Survey is what we did this fall. So we did a reverse survey with our students. Instead of having the staff identify who they have connections with or know personal characteristics of certain students, we had the students talk about, is there a person in the staff in our building? So we went from custodial staff to teachers to administration. Is there an adult in our building that they feel that they are connected with and feel safe with? So with that data, we were able to identify what students in our building did not pick any adult. And from there, that information was shared with the staff to encourage relationships that give us opportunity to continue to meet with students who weren't feeling connected in our building. Did that help me?
yeah,
Okay.
ton. No, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
I have a question too. So for some of these programs like Character Strong, for example, I know that that's done in Boost class by
Yes.
their Boost advisor. Would you anticipate those types of programming going away if we lost a counselor? Or would
With Character Strong, at this moment, I don't necessarily see those lessons being impacted. With Second Step, at this time, I would say yes, because it's the counselors who are doing all of those lessons.
Okay. Are there any other, like she said, some of these I have no clue what it is.
Right.
Are there any other those types of lesson type things that are, we'll call it tier 1, the classroom stuff that we throw away?
Speaking for our building specifically, this year that there's been 11 counselor created classroom guidance lessons, and those have been separate based on need, whether it's reported from the staff, whether it's reported from the student. That's been on empathy, that's been on anxiety, how to get along. We've talked about bullying versus teasing. We've talked about preparation for high school. We're doing a quarter 4 connecting your attendance, your tardies, to your grades, to your amount of times you're asking to leave the classroom. So those are all separate.
And those are made basically based on needs that you see.
Based on needs. And that would be the same for Reams, that they've done 23 counselor creative guidance lessons on top of the social emotional curriculum of Second Step.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Great. I know we've asked for data several times, so thank you. Appreciate that. Excellent. Mr. Daniker, back to you.
And so the last portion of the teaching and learning update for tonight is a circling back on a conversation we've had previously related to our ADSA staffing model. As Superintendent Dean referred to earlier, prior to my presentation, we have made a modification to this based on feedback that we've received. And so on the left on the screen is just a reminder of what our staffing allocation for ADSIS is under the current year, under the current plan that is expiring. That plan called for 4 FTEs of reading. And then the amended plan moving forward calls for the same FTE in ADSIS. The modification there is that an FTE of math would be added at the secondary. And we will see exactly what the split would be based on need between middle and high. Could be even, it could be slightly skewed one way or another based on need. And then splitting the reading at the secondary from 1.0 even, or 1.0 at each of the middle school and high school to a shared 1.0 for reading. But again, maintaining that 4.0 FTE of ADSIS for next year.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Banneker. Thank you so much.
Would you like the podium back?
I don't think it's necessary. Unless the board wants the podium back, we good with the table? All right. Thank you very much. All right. So moving on to item 6, safe and welcoming. We will move back to Ms. Joseph with our community education update. Without any guests. No little kids along with you.
No little kids, no dance instructors. There we go. Okay, so now I'm here to do the community ed report, so I'm just going to kind of go down my list here. First, starting with the community center. Our winter use was extremely high. I think it was probably our busiest winter ever. We increased our adult pickleball to 2 nights a week. We still had pole vault in there, baseball, softball, volleyball, basketball. I mean, every night we were busy until we closed at 9 o'clock, even on the weekends. So, yeah, crazy winter. Memberships just keep increasing slowly but surely, but we're definitely back to our pre-pandemic numbers. And probably rising until the weather gets nicer again. Summers are always a little bit slower. People just cancel their memberships, but because they work out outside, but then winter comes and we're right back up there. So I did just want to mention one thing, and I put it under the RCC thing. So we'll more than likely, with the rising costs of everything, more than likely our rental rates will have to be increasing. So that's something I'm working on with Mike and the finance committee and stuff like that, but I just also wanted to just mention it here, so when you see me here in a month or two, you know why. So, okay. And then Launching Pad Preschool, Early Childhood Family Education. I think I told all of you before, unless it was a Community Advisory Council, that we have put forth an all-day, 5-day preschool class. Just trying to compete with the local child care centers that are where there's so many kids already going 5 days a week. And we said we'd do it if it filled, and it already filled. So, because we already had, we had the pre-registration. Our numbers are looking great, higher than they have been in the last couple of years. At this time of year, we get everybody all the way to September registering, but so our all-day, 5-day preschool class is looking good. And then all of our other classes, 3-day classes and 2-day classes and half-day classes are also filling up, so that's really good. Parent-child classes have been higher this year than they have been even pre-pandemic. A lot of people are coming to our parent classes and our parent-child classes. So we're getting like 5, 6, 7 families, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in early childhood family education that is. And that's what ECFE stands for, by the way. Took me a couple years to remember that, so. I was like, what is that again? It's before I was a director, I was just a community ed coordinator, Rhonda. Galaxy, our summer registration is open, and I was just talking to our coordinator yesterday, and Saturday, sorry, my days have all blended together from the expo. And he said that we are currently 30 more registrations than we were last year at this time. So registration's looking very, very good for Galaxy. And even though we had them last year, I just put it on the agenda to talk about was our field trips, because Cody brought field trips back last year after the pandemic, and they were great. And he's gonna do it the same way this year that he did last year, where it's different grades. Rather than taking 140 kids all to a water park, he takes, the older kids on one day and then the younger kids. So then that way, there's also staff back here with the grades that didn't get to go, and it works out very, very nice for the staff and the kids. I think the kids get a better experience because the field trips are more suited towards their age. So he has that on the agenda again for this upcoming summer, so I'm excited about that. Community education, our late spring/summer brochure will be in mailboxes this week. We'll actually get the office copies tomorrow. I just got an email today from the printers, so they'll be in the RCC and the other buildings tomorrow. Always looking for more adult class instructors. I think that's where we're lacking in our community ed programs is adult classes. We have our fitness classes, but we don't have, we used to have painting and things like that. It's really, really hard to find instructors. I call other districts to see what they're doing. They're like, oh, we do all online classes. And for some reason, online classes don't go over very well in this district for students, for kids or adults. So if you know of anyone looking to make some money, extra money, and teach adult classes, that'd be really, really great. I want more things for the adults to do other than dance, which I said that went over really well, but I just need some art or computer classes, language classes, anything, just flower arranging classes, anything for our adults. So, and then enrollments for the kids classes are still just going really, really strong. I hardly have to cancel any classes anymore. So every now and then there's an art class or two that I have to cancel due to low enrollment, but it's very unusual. So, and then I'm sure all of you have seen it, but I had to add it to the agenda because I want to go longer because Ms. Nyhu says I go way too long all the time. But last Thursday, I got a phone call from the Civil Air Patrol.
So cool.
In Delano. And the guy called me, he's like, we have the Air Force Band coming, we don't have, something got off their schedule, can you accommodate us, because Delano doesn't have an auditorium available. I was like, oh, Delano doesn't have anything available? We do. So, this Wednesday in 2 nights, we'll have the Air Force Heartland Band. You're performing a free concert in our auditorium. Mr. Ferdig already sent out something to the band. The concert's at 7 p.m., but they're also bringing like the Oculus things for people to check out and a flight simulator, which will be out in the parking lot. So they're gonna get here about 5 o'clock, concert's at 7, all that stuff will be there. I will admit, I even told her, I didn't even have time to call her. I was just like, we gotta do this, I'll tell her later. So, because it was a time sensitive thing, like they needed to know right then.
And
so
I was right up.
it's like better to ask
gonna be on board.
Better to ask for forgiveness and permission, but it's, I mean, what a great opportunity.
I'm on board.
Right, and she was right away when I called her.
Right. Oh my gosh.
She's like, I'll call you back. I was like, okay, please do, because we need to chat. So, really great opportunity for Rockford to have this free concert for the community, for the kids. and for, you know, people, a lot of people from Delano will be coming over to see our awesome facilities, so that's really cool.
You should make them walk through the RCC to walk through here to get to the auditorium so they can see how awesome our facilities are.
Okay.
Just an
There we
idea.
go. Just an idea. Oh, sorry, took a wrong turn. Door number 11. And last but not least, the Community Expo, which was just this past Saturday. So attendance was very, very good again this year. We had the Taste of the Towns theme. We did have 2 restaurants not show up, but we still just went for it. I ate a lot of food of all the free samples. We had, I mean, probably well over, you know, 800 people attend. It was nicer this year because we did have rain, so the full 3 hours was busy. Usually it's from 9 to 10:30, and then 10:30 to 12 it trickles off. So that was really good. And like I said, the theme this year was Taste of the Towns. I'm always looking for ideas for the future, the Chamber and I. Ever since the Chamber has come on board, it makes it a lot easier on me, even though, like I told you earlier, I'm still exhausted. It's a very long day, but it's so worth it. The community that comes out and the businesses that come out, I think they have a great experience. Jessica was there with her business, so that was pretty cool. Jamie won a prize, she won a door prize, yeah, so it was pretty awesome. Any questions about community ed?
Any questions? Melissa, I appreciate you being with the Chamber of Commerce to bring that. That's great.
Yeah.
And also the ability to have, I saw 2 of our community mayors there as well, right?
Mhm.
Corcoran Greenfield
Mhm.
had their mayors were there, so I appreciate that. For the tens of thousands of people that listen to this, if someone's interested in presenting or doing an adult course, how would you suggest that they?
Just email me and let me know what kind of course they're interested in teaching, and I can get them all the information on pay and, you know, how we work it. There are certain classes that you have to be certified for, so if you want to teach, I just had someone come talk to me today about a women's self-defense class. You do need to be certified in teaching that. You can't just come and I looked on YouTube and I know how to teach self-defense. No, that won't work. But other classes you don't need certifications for. So.
And I just wanted to make sure people were aware of how
Yes.
they could.
Yep, just contact me.
Questions?
Yeah. So super cool, awesome update as always. As it relates to the ECFE expansion to the all day, 5-day, are there any staffing issues or concerns, or do you feel like you'll be able to have enough staff in order to meet that need, or how are you adjusting?
So, yeah, right now we'll be okay. Because actually some of our teachers anyway had their hours cut after the pandemic because we didn't have as much. So they're quite excited to get their hours back. So teachers, and then as far as assistants go, we may have to hire another assistant. But you know, we'll have that closer to June or July. We'll know more about that. But staffing will look really good. We've already and Tiffany and I approached our teachers first about this, because if we didn't have anyone interested in teaching it, we weren't going to go with it, and they were all on board before we even decided to put it, you know, into the early bird registration. So yeah, they're all on board.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Ms. Preston.
Just for clarification for our listeners, the Air Force Heartland Band will be in the auditorium?
Yes, our auditorium.
The high school.
High school.
High school auditorium, 7 p.m. the concert starts. I would get there a little bit early, just check out the flight simulator, and I have the feeling there's going to be quite a few people there. So
That's on Wednesday?
Wednesday, yep.
And I saw it on that one page, but I don't know if it's gotten to all of the pages out
Yep,
there.
it just actually
so
went live
Rockford
again.
Town or whatever, the community pages and
Yeah, it was
all
on
that.
Greenfield page,
Okay.
It's been on the community center page, school page.
Cool.
I just gotta get in touch with Marlis to put it on the Rockford Pride page.
Nice.
So,
Thank you.
yep, thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent.
she's
Moving
nice, John.
then on to 6C, Staff Recognition Program 22-23, Ms. Dean.
So just quickly, it's that time of year to start preparing for the staff recognition program that we host at the end of the school year. It's actually on the last staff development day. And what you have in front of you in your board packet is the recommended gifts, if you will, that we have provided our retirees or our folks with their years of service for 5, 10, 15, 20. And so I'm bringing this back to the board as we have this time years past to get approval to move forward with purchasing those items and preparing for our end of the year celebration.
Excellent. So this is an action item for the board to approve the staff recognition.
There's nothing different from last year. We did tweak it last year a little bit, but now this year we maintain the exact same recognition.
Excellent. So with that presentation, there is an item up for consideration. I appreciate a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Hillstrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That recognition program carries. Thank you very much. Moving,
Before we move on.
yes.
Just, do we need to set whoever's gonna support the committee?
The committee's
Yep.
behind it? Yep. I was gonna ask that, but wasn't sure if we had that on the committee thing.
It's not
I
on
know,
this
so,
committee
Why did I
pre-
board up to this?
so,
Is that on one of our regular committees?
no.
thing. No.
No?
Right.
No, just three people willing to do it.
So if you see on the second page of this particular item, there is a timeline. And so we will be putting out the nominations at the end of this week with the deadline of the 30th. And then hopefully get the committee together the week of May 1st. So take that into consideration as you're considering yourself for this committee.
And historically, we had two?
Three.
Three? Three. Very good.
Oh, thanks. I've done it for many years, but I'm willing to step back. 3 other people would be willing to. It's very fun, very rewarding, and it's pretty cool to do. So.
It is fun, but I'll be out of town that entire week of May 1st.
I would love to do it again. It's one of my favorite things ever.
Good.
Thank you, Ms. Nealon.
I would be willing to do it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hillstrom. And?
I'll do it.
Wait. Pressure? No. Just kidding. Ms. Edwards.
Are you going to speak or are you going to be Vanna like Brady?
Excellent.
I will not be Vanna.
Thank you very much, Ms. Edwards.
Was that Amy?
Yes. Thank you so much.
You don't want to do it today? Settle down? I've done for so many years.
I've done it for 6. I did it just the first 2. So I'll take it back.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I love it. It's my
important
favorite.
to
It
make
is a
sure
fun-
we
it is
spread it
fun.
around a little bit.
Thank you for the 3 of you that are choosing to help out.
So for those that are listening on the recording right now, we need some good applications, and it is our most favorite thing to do is to sit through and read all of those applications and to read about just the sheer love that everyone has for their coworkers and the impact that they make to the students. So just please, please, please encourage people to submit their nominations because make our job hard. That's what we always love to do. So
Which includes the 10s and 10s online.
yes.
Yes, absolutely. All right, going on to next, number 7, fiscal responsibility, the resolution of acknowledgements of contributions and donations. Ms. Dean.
So, yes, just briefly, the contribution list this month, I say it every single month that I am just amazed at the generosity of the school district, from small donations from individuals to the elementary, and it might be in the form of boxes of crayons or Kleenexes, to donations to specific clubs or organizations, to just general donations to the school district to support our students. And as you can see by the list there, it's all of the above, from single donors to the foundation to families. And then we just thank our school community for their continued support and generosity for our school programs.
Thank you for lifting that up. Appreciate that. So this is a resolution, but we do require a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the acknowledgement of contributions.
Thank you, Ms. Neal. And there's a first and a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. First and a second. Any discussion?
I would like to say, if you've never read a Gerald and Piggy book, because I see we had some donated, I highly recommend that you check it out. You are at loss if you have never read one.
Gerald and Piggy.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I highly recommend it. You will laugh out loud. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you for the recommendation. And Madam Clerk, as this is a resolution, would you please call?
Jamie Hillstrom.
Aye.
Beth Prescott.
Aye.
Eric Birdie.
Aye.
Amy Edwards.
Aye.
Jenny Nealon.
Aye.
Jessica Johnson, aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all of the support from our community members. 7B, robotics update. Looks to be Mr. Pratt. Mr. Dan Pratt.
See what happens.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So when the robotics field trip came before the board last month, Mr. Dan Pratt was out of town, and so I invited him back to speak a little bit more about the field trip and just the details behind that organization and what they're doing, because they're doing some exciting stuff. And I believe the bot is on the road.
The bot is in Oklahoma right now, resting overnight.
The bot is on a road trip.
It's in there, that's good. Yeah, they did a tremendous thing. They qualified for Worlds, and unlike most things, you don't know what's happening until you qualify, and then all of a sudden you get this very urgent, you need to sign up and you need $5,000 now. Literally, they qualified for Worlds, and I believe they had to have the money in Monday. They qualified on Saturday night, had to have the money to hold their spot by Monday. Medtronics put up $2,000. I was called, and I would support any of our programs having an opportunity like that, and I was able to work with Rhonda and say, take $3,000 out of my supply account. I would do it for anybody. I think it's an outstanding achievement. I think it's an amazing thing for these kids to do. And to not do it would be, I would not do it. Does that make sense? That doesn't make any sense to me. As an athletic director, activities director for 26 years, I've always tried to make sure every program felt like they deserved it. They had my attention. I felt blessed. I was able to play athletics in the major sports in college. My kids did absolutely none of that. They were swimmers and dancers and gymnasts. No, they weren't gymnasts. They were terrible at that. Softball players and soccer players and things like that. So I feel blessed to be able to have all those different experiences and look at kids for where they are and what they do, and not try to put certain sports on pedestals, and really look and value everybody for what they do. Some people say, so what do you do with DECA and with FFA? They're not under my tool, they're not under me, they're under the principal. So they, excuse me, they don't have a budget per se. They have classroom time, and they do a lot of stuff in that classroom. Robotics, speech, those things are under me, and they have a budget and so forth. So yeah, so that's what we did. That's what I did, and I would do it again. I have no problem saying that to you guys, and I'm excited for them, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity. And think about it, I don't know what the total number that they had to raise, but it was a lot more than $3,000. Probably heading toward, maybe I helped out 10%, maybe. I think it was closer to 25,000, that total package. That's a big nut to crack, and they did it in a very short period of time, and I'm proud of them, and I think I should really be going down there with them.
Head on down.
No, I did tremendous, and the amount of support they have from the adults that help out, it's quite amazing. So, yeah, any questions?
How are we gonna be up to it? I know they'll probably do it, they'll
probably make sure.
I'm sorry?
I was to say, we're gonna be updated about how they do it, but they do a pretty good job of it themselves. So.
Yeah, they'll let us know and we'll get it out as soon as we can. It's worlds, it's a wild deal. That's, I've never had a team qualify for that, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome.
Any questions for Mr. Pratt? No? No? Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Pratt. Really appreciate
Thank you.
Appreciate you taking care of our kids. Excellent.
What's your money?
Not our money, it's the district's money.
Yeah. All right, 7C, ratifying resolution related to the general obligation. It appears that we do have a guest here to help us with this today. Mr. Michael Hart from PMA. And I know, Rhonda, you are also part of this with...
Correct.
And do we need Mike?
Mike, come on up.
We'll bring Mike along with him.
So, yes, we have Michael Hart here from representing PMA, and of course our very own Mike McNulty, our business manager, to share with you a little bit about the bond sale and that process and the results of the sale. And thank you, Michael, for being here and being patient with us this evening. Good to see you.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here tonight and glad to have heard the president's presentation. It's been a very positive meeting, and I appreciate that, wherever I can find it. So we held the bond sale last Wednesday morning. It seems like a long time ago, but it's just last Wednesday. At 10 a.m. we received bids on the bonds that we have long discussed related to your general obligation capital facilities bonds that are primarily funding security improvements in your school and some other capital needs of the school district. We received 4 bids on that sale, with the best bid coming from Robert W. Baird & Company at 3.02%. And you can see the other bid that came in there, the other bids that came in. 4 bids is fewer bids than we've received on the past bond sales, but because of the size, being a smaller size bond, we were still very happy to see that there were 4 bids, and the fact that they were relatively close together tells us that we were in the market on a good day. As you compare it to what we had in the original plan, it's a great result. The interest rates have moved favorably, and so the timing of that really worked in your favor compared to the original plan of 3.69% true interest cost is what you're expecting versus that 3% rate. What that means is that we're depositing the same amount, $1,480,000 into your construction fund, but the total payback on that is about $100,000 or a little more than $100,000 less over the 15-year period of time. I've included in the presentation in the packet detail in terms of the cost of issuance and an effort to be transparent about that piece of it. And just a review of what this looks like in terms of the payment structure. It's a 15-year bond, and you have a current capital facilities bond. These are bond payments that are made out of your operating capital fund within the general fund. You have 2 more fiscal years left with that current capital facilities bond. During that period of time, we were making only interest payments on the new bond, which you see shown in green on this chart. And then after that, your payment will be roughly the same, actually just slightly less than what you've been paying in the past because of the favorable interest rate. The one last piece that I think was worth highlighting is we did go through a rating process in the last several weeks as a part of this, and there was a report that was issued that affirmed the district's AA- rating. And this S&P Global is the company that produced this report. This is an important part of the bond process to gain the best possible interest rate on the bonds. And if you remember, this rating was recently upgraded for the school district within the last couple of years, and they have maintained that rating. It's a very good rating for a district with your demographic profile. So you have an action item in front of you. The bond sale was awarded last week based upon the parameters resolution that the school board passed by Mr. McNulty and Mr. Gordy. But what you have in front of you is a resolution to take action. It's a final resolution related to this, and the funds will be in the district in May to begin paying for the project.
Mr. McNulty, anything to add? No?
Just like Mr. Hart, I mean, this is his expertise and the district keeping a rating like that, so I mean, we got some things to keep working on, so I know Mr. Ruler will be a busy man again this summer. His folder thing was this high already, so keep it up.
Ms. Dean, are you, anything to
No,
add?
there was nothing else to add, thank you.
Any questions from the board? Checking, Mr. McNulty and Ms. Dean, you had sent out the rating summary, I believe, to the board in email previously?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay, so hopefully you all had a chance to read, and that also supports some of the comments and conversations that were had previously from our board with some of the staffing discussions that had occurred. So appreciate that, and very happy that we were able to maintain our rating. Ms. Nealon, I appreciate you being on the call with us when we did our rating call. Added some great insights, so thank you. With that, there is so the next order of business is the consideration of the ratification of the sale of the district's general obligation capital facilities bond series 2023A to be issued in the original aggregate principal amount of $1,360,000. So that is the motion resolution up. I would appreciate a motion as such.
I will make that motion. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Ms. Nealon. There is a motion on the floor. I do require a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Praska. Motion has been seconded. Any discussion? As this is a resolution, Chair Johnson, would you, Clerk Johnson, would you please call the roll?
Jamie Hillstrop.
Aye.
Beth Prasko.
Aye.
Eric Gordy.
Aye.
Amy Edwards. Jane Nealon.
Aye.
Jessica Johnson, aye. That is a unanimous vote to approve the referendum as stated in the agenda.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it. It's good. It's a nice end
Yes,
of
if you
the
don't
year.
mind, just for the next item.
Yep, so 7D, the expanded referendum history. And we will go to Ms. Dean.
Sure, thank you, Chair Gordy. So last month, we presented, speaking of referendums and the operating referendum that's going to expire in 2025. Last month, we brought forward, with the help of PMA, a summary of the last 10 years of our pass-fail record, if you will, and what those percentages were. We're expanding that conversation this month and added a little bit more. So I don't know if you have this, Michael, to speak to, if you have your piece. We added a little bit more meat to the bone, if you will. Your document last month went back 10 years. We've gone back now 20 years and actually looked at not just the 20 years, but what we've added for the board is the exact questions that were associated with those elections over the past 20 years. So again, it's an attempt to scaffold up the conversation with the board related to this operational levy that will be expiring in 2025, because it's a conversation that we will have to have. I know this is on the agenda or on Mike's, Mr. McNulty's radar to bring back to the Finance Committee for next steps. But again, I wanted the full board to have a little bit more information in terms of the bonds that have been passed, the times that we've attempted and it has failed, what exactly the question was that passed and or failed, what the length of that ask was, what the amount was for each of those asks. Again, just to provide the board a little bit more information as we go into these next few months and having conversations about what a campaign could look like if we chose to go back out to our voters to renew the existing levy or to ask for additional funds, maybe in the form of a technology question. And later this evening, we're gonna hear quite a robust report from our Director of Technology about what those needs are. And the fact that we have become a one-to-one device school district in the last 3 years, we have an opportunity to really add on and maintain what we've been able to build at this point. And so, again, this information is coming to the board as information to have and become familiar with as we get closer to possibly making a decision to move forward with a bond or a referendum question. So, any questions?
Ms. Edwards?
Okay.
Yes.
When will we see our financial status taking out the IB funding? So that we can get a true understanding of like the gap and what we'll need to fill as a result of some of that to the general fund?
Yeah, so, as discussed at the last board meeting back in March, the goal here would be to bring all that information back in May to take a look at, so that any plans as we're making from the summer up through the fall, that we can start that discussion then. And then I believe also, we also look at wanting to remove how much our operating levy is right now and where that affects. So if we remove, let's just say, a certain amount, how much you would have there. And as that's going forward, I know that's not for 2 years, but I believe recommendation would be coming from the committee too, to look at running a referendum this fall. And then, of course, because next year it being a major election year, you'd like to stay away from, so.
Thank you. So we'll look forward to that next month. And then my second question is, as it relates to local authority to renew, community authorized levies, what is the current status, or how do I say this? A couple of years ago, there was some legislature that did or didn't pass. I'm not quite for sure. I thought that for some reason it did pass, but Mr. Hart, could you just give the board an update on, like, as it relates to local, like, operating levies like this, in current state, is there any statute that allows for boards to to renew? Not, we can't now because we did it, 6 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever, but is there anything on the books right now that gives, you know where I'm going?
Yeah.
Thank you.
There is, there has been legislation proposed in past years and currently is under consideration in the legislature to allow the board to renew a referendum without going back to the voters. It is not a part of current law. There is one major difference between a renewal election and an increase election in terms of the ballot language that needs to be on there. If you are just renewing an election, at the end of any ballot question, statute is very specific about what it needs to state, and it's, for most questions, if you're increasing or you're doing a bond question, it says this will be a property tax increase. You're voting for a property tax increase. If you're doing a renewal, you can change that language to something that's more favorable, that says something along the lines of you're voting to extend a property tax that's currently in place. Pretty big difference in terms of if you're don't have a lot of information before you walk into the board. One key thing though, as you think about timeline, so is you're only allowed to use that language in the 2 elections preceding the date when it expires. So you could not renew this fall with that language. You would need to be considering an increase. Likely you could use that language in the fall of 2024 or the fall of 2025 with your current referendum. Okay, so that's in terms of considering the proposal for this fall, we would, there's lots of things to talk through from that standpoint.
Clarification, that language, the law is not passed though. So what you just said.
No, what I just said is current law.
It is current, okay,
The difference in language on the ballot, so if the new law would say you don't even have to go back to your voters under certain circumstances to renew. That's just a hopeful thinking at this point until the legislature passes it, right? So if we're working within the construct that we have today, that's where there's the 2 differences in language, and you can only renew 1 year early with the favorable language in statute. And that 1 year early would be November of 2024 or November of 2025.
And our referendum, does that expire in November, or does it run the school year? Does it expire in June? When?
Yeah, it's based on the property taxes for a calendar year.
Okay.
And so the levy, the ask was in 2018, so the first calendar year was in 2019 calendar year taxes, which is for fiscal year 20 in terms of the way the district receives revenue. So we're talking, if you count 7 years forward from there, we're talking about the last year that the taxpayers are paying tax under the current authorities in 2025, which means to levy you levy the tax in December. So by the time we get to December 2025 for taxes payable on 26, you would need to have authority to make that levy. So putting that together, the last time you could ask for the authority is November of 2025.
Okay.
And that is for fiscal year 26. So you have 3 more school years or budget years with the authority in place as it sits today. It is different and it might make sense to do a longer working session on this with all the
For
whole
sure.
or some
Oh, yeah.
board,
For sure.
board. The capital projects levy, but this is important as I'm thinking as you just start to process. The capital projects levy is not tied to a November election date like the operating referendum is. Okay, so if you would go back to do a technology levy, you can do that in February, April, May, August, or November. And those are the same dates you can ask for a bond question in front of your community. With an operating referendum, you're required to hold that in November. It doesn't have to be at a general election. It could be a special election in an odd numbered year, like it could be this November. The only exception to that is if you hold an all-mail ballot, which is usually not a favorable way to proceed through the election.
Thank you for that clarification, because there's a lot of discussion that this was our first year opportunity, not next year with favorable language. Okay. Thank you for clearing that up for
Yes.
us. Appreciate that. Yes. Okay. Any other questions then? Or clarifications necessary?
No, but this will be a priority for the finance committee to drill down a little bit more.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. That's good information to hear. Thank you. All right. Appreciate your time. So we will move on to item number 8, efficient, effective operations. Superintendent Dean.
Thank you, Chair Gordy. So last week, April 14th, we received from Education Rockford a notice to intent to negotiate. And so what you have in your board packet is the official notification from Education Minnesota Rockford to move forward with negotiating for their next contract, which expires on June 30th. And so we'll move right into that shortly this summer.
We have our negotiations committee in place, so.
We do.
Ready.
For the record, the negotiating team in terms of board representation is Jessica Johnson, Beth Praska, and Amy Edwards.
Good. All right, the next item then, or any questions I should ask before any of that? Very good. Next item then is 8B, Iowa reauthorization resolution. Superintendent Dean.
This is a procedural item that every year we have to renew what we call our Iowa, and it is an authorization that allows myself and then I can designate a proxy to go into the NDE website and upload financial data, put information in about grant applications and those sorts of things. And it also gives us the ability to designate specific individuals within the organization to have access to those specific areas of the finance portal to put in specific data.
So then, Ms. Dean, with your, at the end of the school year with your retirement pending, I'll anticipate then our next superintendent will have to take action again.
Correct.
Pretty much straight away.
Correct.
Your proxy then will be,
My proxy right now is Courtney Nyberg,
very good.
but you're absolutely right. Right after the first July 1, we'll be presenting this to the board again. It's unfortunate that it's expired, within 60 days, but we cannot have a gap in having that access. Yes.
So I just have a question on that. Do we bring this back that last meeting, or our meeting in June, for it to be effective as of July 1? Because we don't meet until 3 weeks into July. I don't know if that's a concern, so I just want to make sure that
We'll have to
we
check.
have it in
We'll
place.
Sure, we can follow
Find
up
out.
on that.
Can you do that? Just
Sure.
check, because then if we,
Yeah, no
it'd be great if
gaps.
we could say you through
Sure.
June
Right.
30th and, with this one, but I just,
Agreed.
you can check, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll check on the timeline for that, if we can do that in advance even.
Yeah, 'cause it's
him-
only like the
this
week
contract
before.
starting, correct.
Right,
Yeah.
otherwise there'd be a 3-week gap. And there
Yeah.
is, in July, it is definitely slowed down, but I
But
don't
you
know
just
a
never
3-week
know in
gap.
these situations.
It
that
doesn't
might-
throw a slowdown for you. I'm just
No,
saying.
and quite honestly, we're in the MDE portal almost, it feels like every other
Yeah.
day.
And that's what
So
I
it'd be
But-
important to have that in place.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Excellent, thank you. This is a resolution up for consideration. I'd appreciate a motion.
I can make a motion to approve the Iowa reauthorization resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Praska, and a second.
Oh, second.
Thank you, Ms. Hillstrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, this is a resolution. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Jamie Hillstrom,
Aye.
Beth Preska,
Aye.
Eric Birdie,
Aye.
Amy Edwards, Jenny Nealon,
Aye.
Jessica Johnson, that is a unanimous vote.
Excellent, thank you.
Resolution passes.
Appreciate that. 8C then, Technology 5-Year Plan. Mr. Keenitz. And thanks to Mr.
So-
Daniker, we're still at the table.
So as Mr. Keenan's gets organized, last board meeting or the meeting before, the board has requested a 5-year technology plan. Again, it's part of that preparation of looking at what the needs will be moving forward, especially in the area of technology, because we, as a district, we did get a boost, if you will, through the ATSIS grant funding that the state provided over the past couple of years, but we don't want to lose anything in this process of moving forward. And so Mr. Keenitz is here to provide a brief overview of the needs and a 5-year budget to maintain our current level of technology support for our community. So Mr. Keenitz, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you, board, for allowing me to come back. Is this ready to go for you? All right. Tonight, I'm gonna try and move along.
Oh, yes. I know, technology.
Technology.
So, tonight I'm gonna try and move along relatively quickly, because again, there is a lot to cover. But what I'd like to let you know is that if you go to, the link that I created this afternoon isn't up there, but very simply, if you go to the school website, to the main page, you'll see a faculty button up on towards the top. If you click on that, you will see a link to the technology page where I put all of this stuff, including the 5-year technology draft.
Yes.
So in that way, you're able to go back and review it, read it, love it, learn it, all that great stuff. So, and these are just a couple of ones that the actual plan is on our technology website, but again, I put it up in the faculty just to make it easier to navigate. All right, first we have, the strategic plan mission and the strategic plan vision. That hasn't changed in years. But moving along and adapting that into technology, there's a technology vision, and that is empowering stakeholders with equitable access to high-quality instructional practices
through a secure digital environment while providing exceptional support and customer service is the overarching vision of technology services at Rockford area schools. And this helps to tie in what I'm going to talk about today to our strategic plan. Isn't that awesome? So we're going to launch some innovation. So one of the things that we do, of course, is looking at the current state of technology and assessing the needs. So what I created this graphic to do is just represent, as you already know, all of the different needs that so many people in our district and community have in reference to technology. And one of our roles, or my role, is to play that role in supporting the various educational initiatives, the curriculum, and all the professions in use here to use the technology. So these are just all of the suggestions and ideas and assessments that come together. But then one of the things that I need to do, there's my rocket pencil, is we have to take that data and move it into digital curriculum and governance. So I start then organizing all those needs assessed and start putting it into these different areas. And I'll just let you look at it just for a moment. This is not all inclusive, but these are the kind of the ones that have stuck out over the past few years as meaningful or in need of operations or goals. So I'm not going to go through and read them all, and the PowerPoint is also on that same webpage, because I noticed a couple of pages didn't come through on in the board book.
Oh, yeah, the ones with the actions on them.
Yeah.
All
So,
fancy, okay.
yes. So once we create put the vision, technology vision to the strategic plan, and we look at the needs assessed, we need again to look at the core strategies that are involved. And some of these core strategies, I put them into 4 different sections. One of them is to engage and empower our staff and students and community. Another one is to enable equitable access and the effective use of technology. The other is to the environment, to create a safe and secure environment for all of us who are here. And then finally, educational technology support. So I put all these needs into these 4 core strategies. So very briefly, what are they? So to engage and empower, our stakeholders will be informed about how we're going to establish and maintain best practice in the following areas. Number one is to sustain our one-to-one programs and our digital learning programs. We also need to learn how to leverage our technology to enrich instruction and instructional practices and to foster student engagement. Following that, we have to have the ability to assess our students' needs, and often that's a technological piece. And so that we can, or that the Office of Teacher and Learning can best describe services for those students. Because again, and then finally, digital citizenship, so that we can teach our staff and primarily our students the significance of online behavior and the importance of being a positive digital citizen. Under the next strategic area is the enabling of equitable access and effective use, which kind of leads to our enterprise services. And so our stakeholders need to have the confidence that we have an infrastructure that can handle the needs of our business, and that we have the ability to manage our resources in a prudent manner that is productive, that creates productive learning and knowledge, as well as allows us to conduct business. That we can create technological systems and the infrastructure so that we can create personalized and meaningful instruction, so that the instruction that we do is not necessarily the traditional classrooms of years ago, but that we can have the ability to individualize the learning needs across the spectrum. A quick example would be the new career tracks that the IB program wants to do at the high school. Accessibility is very important, and that we need to learn how our accessibility options can remove the obstacles and create an all-inclusive environment. The next section, of course, is our environment, creating a safe and secure environment. And here is our cybersecurity practices, our digital security and privacy, and the ability for the integrity of our data. Because as you know, one of the key components of our environment is to create a confidentiality so that our data is secure. We need to have assurance of data that it's going to be delivered. And we also have to have the integrity of the data so that we know that it's free of malware and bad things. And all of that's tied together in the cyber side. And then finally, the educational technology support. Our department, as well as others, like technology integration and other people who support us, need to collaborate and communicate effectively to the people who have needs, which is staff and students. We have to be able to design the program so that we can utilize the tools and resources necessary to support our stakeholders. And we need to be able to have accessible materials online or in other places that people can go to on demand, so that they don't necessarily need to talk to us every day. They can help figure it out themselves and have the materials and stuff available so that they can, again, individualize their professional development. All right. So with all those core strategies or basic core strategies, that moves us into the goals. That's going to drive the budget moving forward. So in engaging and empowering goals, which is basically the educational technology side, again, we want to sustain and improve our one-to-one digital learning program. We need to replace, integrate, and train stakeholders with the classroom interactive boards. As you know, we've already done the high school. The middle school boards are on order. They're sitting in a warehouse. They will be delivered in May so that we can get them up in June. The last entity is the elementary school that we need to figure out how to get those boards, I believe, into 41 classrooms. Then we'll have the same technology district-wide. 3, our goal is to establish and maintain a safe technological environment. Oh, let me catch up here in case I have notes. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. And 4, review the abilities of stakeholders to utilize integrity-based analytics. Right now we're using Tableau, we're using FastBridge testing, and several other MCA testing scores, many different areas, but we need to improve and learn how to do it better. And then how to determine and implement and monitor all this data to make sure that we're delivering the service at or below budget. All right, moving along quickly. Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to just jump right in. The next is enabling equitable access and effective use. Again, our enterprise systems. Our goals are to achieve a more efficient and scalable infrastructure so that our infrastructure works and isn't too big or too small for our needs. Next is to ensure the support of the operations. We need to have the ability to itemize and list all of the things that we're doing so that we can put it on a refresh schedule or do simple maintenance checks and balances on these items. And then again, create for the goal 3 is basically getting the data out, the applications out to the students. And if you've visited our website recently, you will see the list of our digital tools that we put up this fall. And there are many, dozens and dozens of digital tools that we're offering to students. And this goal allows us to work those goals so that they fit the curriculum and as well as adhere to the Minnesota's Data Privacy Act and many others. All right, well, we're not going too fast. I apologize if I am. And then goal number 4 is, again, to align all of these things to our critical school infrastructure to make sure that our phone systems, our public address systems, our point of sale systems, our servers, our wireless technologies are up to date. And as I'll get along inside the budget mode here, you'll see that some of these systems have actually achieved and or have exceeded end of life. And number 5, again, is to implement a comprehensive maintenance program and put in a change order, put in the ability to do patch management, put in the ability to ensure that the stuff that we have is maintained so that we can get the full lifespan out of it. And document that as well. All right, safe and secure environment. Again, we want to create action plans and best practices to assess our risks based on industry standard. On the school webpage that I gave you, the faculty section, I did include one of our protocols or best practices, which is the initial one. And at the end of that document, it does list many of the other protocols that we have in use or in play today that help us to manage our department. I don't publish them on the website because it does deal with security. But if you'd like to see them, I have no objection for you to look at them.
And just an add-on, and you heard this, Ms. Nealon, as well, that when we were in our bond rating column, Rhonda had made alluded to our cyber attack, referencing those items, helped ease some of the questions and concerns in that rating call as well. So thank you for carrying that through.
And during the budget process, I will kind of highlight some of the things that we're doing today that are kind of, I don't say mandated, but they're mandated by insurance. And then we want to deploy and implement our resources effectively in a security program. We want to comply with all the regulatory reporting requirements that are, again, that are mandated, not just in terms of the infrastructure, but when you get an opportunity to look at the technology plan, what I did not put here for the sake of time is under each of these strategic goals, in the plan I wrote focus. And under each goal, you can see where I'm actually focusing in on specific parts of these goals. So that it'll hopefully will make it much clearer to the reader and to the community that, yep, this goal is kind of broad, but these is what we're going to focus on. So for example, in strategic goal number 3, a lot of that is like the MDE reporting that we're required to do, and the changes from moving to Ed5, and the fact that we have to move a lot of our other systems like Aleo and stuff into campus. And we've done a lot of work cleaning campus. We have civil rights reporting. We now have mandatory cyber reporting to the federal government. And there's a big list. You can go in and you'll say, that's cool. So a lot of those are listed in that focus area. And then finally, the strategic goal here is to provide security in our schools, physical security, and to improve our physical security with cameras and door controls and such. And when I get to the budget part shortly here, you'll see where a lot of that fits in. And then finally, the fourth section of the strategic vision, or the core basic goals here, is the educational technology support. And I don't want this to sound like it's the technology department, because it isn't just my department. This goes to Office of Teaching and Learning and other staff that work with people to enhance the technology or the technology integration in our buildings. So this goal is to tie all that training together and give exemplary support to our staff in a timely manner. And the last one here that ties into it, and then that's that online component where we need to have the ability to teach our staff. For example, one of the mandates is that we are supposed to teach all staff cybersecurity parts a minimum of twice a year. If we don't achieve that goal and we get a breach, then they may not pay the bill because we didn't follow through to make sure everybody got trained. So these are some of the things that go into those goals. All right. part. Coming up to the budget. Now, this budget is tied to past practice. So I want to kind of put it out front that past practice should not dictate future practice. That one of the goals that I spoke of quickly in here is the importance for us to lay out all of our infrastructure, put it in a Gantt chart or in a timeline, et cetera, and then look at what we did in the past, either expand or subtract it to fit our needs, and then go back out and rebudget, and go back out and redo it. So I'm going to tell you up front that these numbers are based on past practice, but I feel we can do better, and that we should do better if we're going to put this out to the public. All right, again, sustaining the one-to-one programs. Chromebooks will generally last 5 to 6 years. I can tell you, in the middle school environment, we're getting about 4. So, now currently in the elementary, we have 616 available of an Acer Spin. That end of life is June 2027, and then we have 24 available. You see that we have 24 spares, I guess you could say. The Acer Spins, the reason why the elementary is different is because those are touch screen. And at the time that they were purchased, that was the consensus that it would be better for those students to be able to touch their way through the screens than to be stuck with the mouse and keyboard. Middle school, high school, you can see that there's 1178 that will be coming end of life in June 2026, and we have 173 that are coming end of life in June 2024. Altogether, we're sitting on about 1,991 Chromebooks, and we have 1698 out, directly registered to students or a person. That does leave 293 available, which in our number sounds like a big number, but you have to realize that we probably have 100 in a stack that need to be repaired. And we also have a bunch of carts in the media centers. We have staff that have them. We use them for registration, like for kindergarten registration, and each office has some for when people come in for online registration. So that number, while it looks skewed, isn't. But again, we can do better. I think as we move this program and mature this program, I don't think we need 1991. We could probably get by with about 1,800 or maybe even 1,750 and reduce our costs. All right, so what's the bottom line? Each unit of the Chromebook is about $340, and that includes a licensing fee of $30 a Chromebook just for the pleasure of putting it up into Google. And it used to be that license was perpetual, but of course that didn't make them enough profit, so it's no longer. So we have to buy this license fee on top of the Chromebook. Again, 1991 units at about $340 is $676,940. We do have Google for Education. That is part of our systems, which gives Google Classroom and others. It also allows us to integrate Infinite Campus into Google, and so that teachers can push assignments and documents and et cetera out, and it goes into the classroom and it comes back when it's time for grading. That costs us about $4,500 a year, which you can see the 5-year cost. Aristotle K-12 is our management program, and again, over 5 years, that'll be about $62,500. There are other programs out there, and when they come due, we can shop around, but those management programs are all about the same price. So they know the game. Basically, what we really look for is if we can join some sort of consortium that has a selling type reduced price. Repairs, well, we've been averaging about $15,000 a year in repairs. That's on paper. In reality, I haven't spent much. We had about 200, over the last 2 years, it's been actually $28,000, but that was 200 broken screens. We've had 28 devices that just were not fixable that we lost, and we lost 95 chargers. The reality is that I bought, I think, 40 chargers. That's it. The rest we've used, we've recycled from previous Chromebooks that we've had, and we've torn out the old Chromebooks before we recycled them, and we've been recycling the parts. However, if we end up changing to a different model, like a G5 or whatever, I have to put that number in the budget. So estimated the 836 is the current price to maintain the status quo in that program. However, if we not stick with the status quo, I'm kind of hoping that we can knock about $150,000 to $200,000 off that. And part of that might be a Chromebook is good for 6 years, 5 to 6 years. If we use it for 4 years, and then maybe push that extra 2 years into the elementary where we don't do state testing, the K through 2, that might be a way then for us to push the life longer, which means we won't have to buy those other ones. So that is part of that planning that we're gonna have to really look at over the next 30 days or so, so that we don't have to go on past practice. All right. Any questions on Chromebooks real quick? Okay. Complete the classroom interactive boards. The cost to complete that project, again, we've already done the middle school, high school, middle school will be done this summer, that's already on the books. And the money's already there to pay for it. The last one is about it's actually $127,000 for the elementary to finish the 41 classrooms. And as you can tell, I'm pushing that to my heart's content because that's a project that I really want to finish. So we're working on figuring it out. And then, yes, ma'am.
So before you go on from the boards, this is to just get them all in, but then at some point in time, like they'd have to be replaced, wouldn't they? Or not necessarily? How does that work?
The company provides a 5-year warranty on the products, but they should last at least 5 years or more after that, because we've mounted most of them, they're protected, they're sturdier boards. So my intent is that we get 10+ years out of that.
Okay. So what are we doing with all the active boards that we have?
A lot of them are junk. There's not a big market for them. And right now we've got, before we started this project, we had several different brands and models and projectors, and I was carrying about a dozen different kinds of light bulbs, which aren't cheap, and et cetera. And then the more realistic part is you'd have a substitute come in, or you have I always call it the magical shuffle, where teachers move classrooms every year. Well, they have to retrain on all these different boards because they have different software, different this, different that. And so the goal is when we're done, it's one-stop shopping. The students can connect to it, the staff all can connect to it, and we can just have a standard. To give you one example, we did have one board go down for some reason, and the company replaced it with a better model. So, so far that has worked to our advantage. Any other questions? Okay. Phone system. Yeah. Our phone system is currently call-based, and our phones are, I'm guessing, 10 or more years old. I cannot buy the phones anymore. I have to go to a third-party market. Fortunately, as you know, Mr. Cady attends our school district. He has a phone business, and he works hard at trying to find the parts that we need to get them for us. And he doesn't charge us extra, but they're still over $1,000 a phone for a used phone. So, and our phone system itself, to give you an idea, is we're currently paying about $50,000 a year just to get a dial tone. That doesn't include the calls we make. That's just pick up the phone, have a dial tone, and be able to transfer calls and all that stuff. It is not E911 compliant. So our phone system is very antiquated. So when speaking with phone vendors and with past practice, it's always been that the estimated cost is about $1,000 per extension. We have about 285 extensions in this complex. So the general most likely cost to replace our phone system is going to be about $285,000. In addition, we are not E911 compliant, like I mentioned at the last board meeting when I presented, and that will require about a $16,000 investment and a $1,300 a month annual fee thereafter. So that is something that we're probably just going to have to do and accept and figure out what's going to be pushed out. So, and then just as a side note, it's not in on this budget, but currently we're supporting about $6,000 annually in mobile cell phone technology. We have some departments and staff that have district cell phones. So, and then again, the phone system and E911 compliance, I estimate that to be about $310,000. Might be cheaper because we'll RFP it, of course, and hopefully we'll get a local vendor who has to help us out. Our cloud, yes, ma'am.
Was that a one-time cost? Sorry.
It depends how you do it. Again, if we decide to stay in the cloud, and have a cloud-based phone system like we do now, where it all just goes through our internet and goes up, and we do not have a local controller that sends the calls out. Currently we're paying about $50,000 a year annually. So if we continue to work that practice, I'm guessing that the new service will be a little more expensive, because that's what it is. So multiply, let's say, $60,000 by 5 years would be about $300,000 if we maintain. But that does not include changing out the phones. And I've already been told by the phone vendors that our phones,
That's two separate ones.
yeah, our phones are not compatible with any new systems. So whenever we change phone systems, there's a high likelihood that we're going to have to buy all new phones. And those phones, again, are $1,000 a piece. So that's why it might be cheaper for us to buy our own controller and put in our own phone system locally and then add the phones on. Yes, ma'am.
I just know in the past we had a time where we didn't have internet, and that to me was kind of scary for the district to not be able to communicate out. That it was only a cell phone, and that just, so something to think about if we do go with.
In our current phones, we use our trunk, our internet trunk. If we had our own controller here, we can attach some, what we call a SIP line. Instead of the internet, we can do a SIP trunk, which brings in the calls through that. And depending if we have, I've done it where I've had in two separate buildings, our own controller, and I put SIP trunks in both, and then I connected them through our network, so that when one part of town goes down, like we had when we had the power outage over at the high school, the middle school picks it all up. And we still have phones, it's just we only have half as many lines. So that's some of the redundancy that we have to work in when we actually plan this out down to the penny. But at this point, I would anticipate about that in 1 month. The last phone system I put in did not, well, we bought 50 phones, but that cost about $400,000 for the same kind of system. But that system had, again, almost 400 extensions. Over my career, I've put in 4 different phone systems. So, classroom amplification system, the public or the PA system. Currently, at one of the bonds that went out several years ago, or 10 years ago, you may recall that this was part of that. Well, the 5-year warranty on these stuff ended a few years ago. And now we're starting to see some failure in these Junos. So this is something that we should look at in fixing. For example, the servers that have been in play are now going on 10 years old for these servers, and that's a long time for that kind of equipment. You've heard me before use the analogy that I like to compare technology to a dog, and that 1 year of our life is 7 years for a dog. So if this thing's going on 10 years old, it's approaching 70. So, and that's kind of realistic for technology in this case. So just to get the servers replaced on the back end for the 3 buildings would be about $74,000. On the classroom side, each classroom costs about $2,450. That is the unit that sits there, the microphone that goes around the person's neck, and the charger that you charge the thing. All that together is about $2,450, and we currently have 140 units, so you can see that that is a glorious number. And then we would do most of that installation ourselves, but the consulting and installation guidance would be about $10,000. One of the positive things, if we stick with the status quo, is that the Juno has been purchased by the people who our smartboards are, Clever Touch, and they are working, or they have a system where we can put those Junos inside of our Clever Touch, which then would allow dual broadcast like that. And we'd be able to integrate that into the phone system better. So if an emergency occurred, the offices or somebody could take over the Junos and the boards to broadcast visually and audibly that there's an emergency or even announcements in the morning type of deal. So that is a possibility if we stay with the status quo. All right, I'm going to move along. Server infrastructure in our core software. About $240,000 is the cost to replace our servers in kind. Now, that's a lot of money. However, I've done most of this already. So this whole amount that you see here may not be applicable to the full 5-year technology plan. I put it here for transparency. Now you do see that the Microsoft licensing overall runs about the licensing on the servers runs about $60,000 over 5 years. So, and those the breakdown of our three primary, our Microsoft licensing, our backup software, and the VMware, which hosts all of our servers. And our primary server was about $95,000. We're just finishing the installation of that. So that's going to run for us hopefully the next several years outside. So that's been replaced already. And that main server hosts about 30 other servers that we have in the district, like printing and business services and identity management and all sorts of things, testing. The secondary servers are about $8,000. One of them is for backup systems. And so we replaced that about a year or so ago to shore up our backups. And then we have some storage area networks, which some people call SANs. And we have about 3 of them. Each cost is about $30,000. And those are the devices that store all the data. So our big server is connected to a SAN. So like the data that all the staff have, their My Documents, is on the SAN, and the server sends that data out to people. So realistically, the cost here would be greatly reduced if you did $60,000 over 5 years for the licensing, and then the cost of maybe one SAN and one secondary server. Next, just general computers and devices. We have about 100 desktops, and we recently, so the most are end of life. That's not true. After I thought about that, it's like, no, I'm not telling the truth on that one. So the 100 desktops, we just recently replaced 64 of them. That was for the high school. That was the end of the IV grant. So that was about 2 years ago. And that's the art lab and the business lab. The rest of them were office computers, my computer, a bunch of other computers we have around. We have some iPads, we have some tablet PCs, things like that. So I estimate about $900 per unit to change them out. We recently purchased in 22, 170 new laptops, and if you recall, I got a grant to pay for those. So again, those laptops should last right towards the end of this plan. So this $260,000 you see does reflect the 5-year cost, but a lot of that doesn't fit in this 5-year window, okay? But I wanted you to see that we have this cost. The wireless network. Again, we maintained these systems for several years. Currently, we have 116 access points about the complex. We anticipate that we'll probably bump up to about 130 in the near future. Part of that is the athletic complex. And the cost today is about $711 per access point. That the outdoor access points are about twice that cost. And we get the pleasure of $155.56 every 3 years to license each access point. Because, past practice again, it's all up in the cloud. So we don't have a controller to control the stuff. So when you look at $155.56 for 3 years, multiply that out to 5 years, and you're looking at 30-some thousand. So a controller is about half that. So we could knock the price down if we just got our own controller. We still license them, but then we don't have to worry about paying the bill, so to speak. We can keep it local. So, because right now, if we lose the internet, we lose control of our access points. They might still work because they have a memory inside, but we don't have control of them. We can't see them. We just trust that they're there. So anyway, about $165,000 to replace that system. Switch network. A lot of these were changed out in 2017. A lot of them haven't been changed out for much longer. Again, somebody got a great deal. The end of life on those systems that they bought in 2017 was December 2020. I'm guessing we got a good deal on them because they were coming down out of end of life or end of sale, so they put them in. And then the 2960 switches, we have about 30% of those of the fleet. Those are way older. We can't even get updates. We were kind of hacking updates from other people. So the cutoff for those was 2021 for the total, so we can't even replace our current switches. So anyway, the new switches are 9,300. They cost about $7,500 each. Currently, we have about 30. We'll be adding 4 or 5 for the athletic complex. So I anticipated 40, even though it's a slightly high number. So you can see it's going to cost about $300,000. And those switches are going to need to be replaced sooner than later. Yes, ma'am?
Would you please tell me what a switched network is?
Certainly. Every connection, whether it's wireless or the wall connections, like the phones, all of the phones, all of the computers that you plug into the wall, the infrastructure, the sensors for the building control system, all of the doors, the cameras, all of those Internet of Things devices attached to a switch. So every device has its own port on the switch. And then the switches have what we call PoE, power over Ethernet. And so each switch port is powered, and that sends the electricity needed to run the camera or run the access point, so that we don't have to install electricity at the end of all these things. And different parts of the network require different amounts of electricity. So that powers it. So basically every device that we have, currently we're running 48 port switches. We have about 30 switches, so whatever that math is about the ports that we manage. And so that runs our backbone of anything that plugs into the wall. Okay? Yep. Including the internet. The other part that we do on the switches is, again, we manage each port, and we have what's called a VLAN, a virtual LAN, and we divide up the ports and we divide up the network into a virtual network so that the cameras are by themselves and that traffic is going by itself. And that the desktop computers are here and the phones are in their own network. And that way, to put it very simple, only one transaction occurs at a time on the network, albeit it's very fast. But if you have a problem with a desktop computer that has a virus or has a problem and it's just spewing out garbage, it'll slow the other desktops down. But our phones will still work, the cameras will still work, the doors will still open, because we've segmented the network. And that's what those switches do.
Thank you.
Yep.
And just to clarify, so like, let's say, so you've really painted a picture that our switch network is in a tough spot-ish. I mean, just ish, yeah. So, can I ask a clarifying question though first though? So like, let's say, like, the door switches go down, like something happens. Does that then mean that the doors, like something, it won't open or it won't unlock? Like this could be an issue if the switches go down?
Yes and no.
Okay?
Sorry to be vague. For the doors, you will often have 3 or 4 doors on a controller. That controller is just this box. That controller is then sent to a switch. So that one switch port will run 4 doors. And if the power goes down, there's a battery in that controller. And the doors, when James sends out door schedules or key fob numbers and stuff, that data is sent to that controller and it's stored. So that if we lose connectivity, people can still swap. Unless the doors are programmed that when they lose connectivity, they lock. And sometimes some doors are set to lock because they don't want people just going in and out at will. And then hopefully the data, then once the connectivity comes back, the data of who swiped and who didn't, or if somebody's been changed, then it exchanges that data back. So that we have the log file. The other exception is when that battery runs out, which is often less than an hour, the doors then go dark. And at that point, that's where the programming comes in. The doors, when the power starts to bleed, it sends a signal to the doors that's pre-programmed, and the door will either be open or closed. And most of the doors in these buildings will be forced to lock. And then nothing works. The doors are just locked and you have to go the old-fashioned key.
Thank you.
Okay? Oh, and then just going back on the switches. Currently, I have about $200,000 in federal funding sitting in a little basket. And my intent is to leverage those dollars to probably take out the old parts of the old wireless network and the switch network, like the 2960s that are over 10 years old. They need to go. And so I want to leverage those funds because those funds end June 2025 and replace those so that we may not realize the full cost. Okay? Cameras and door controls, since we're on that. Our True Vision system is in excess of 10 years old. It was installed by the power company here in town years ago. They don't even do it anymore. And Right-Hennepin Power, they took care of the system many years ago, and they don't have the technicians even do it anymore. So when the stuff dies in that True Vision system, we're forced to move it into the Invisalign. Currently, we have 11 analog, 55 digital, and just so you know, I have 7 cameras down from the True Vision right now, and my cost to fix them is going to be like $13,000 or $14,000. So I'm kind of holding off because it's that horrible time of year when you don't want to spend money. But at the same time, I've got 7 cameras down. So we have 73 in the Invisalign system, and so in total we have about 139 cameras. The average cost per camera is about $2,000 based on the previous quotes that I left over and kind of manipulated. So we are sitting on about $264,000 in assets right now. So I figured to move the True Vision cameras up into the Invisalign system and finally merge them. For example, right now we have to go into 2 different systems to look at cameras. And the True Vision is so old that it only works on a desktop type computer. That's why I still have a desktop in my office, for example. And whereas the Invisalign, I've been able to port that out through the firewall so that people can see them off campus in an emergency. But that's only 73 of our 139 cameras. So anyway, about $225,000 to take care of that. And then I estimated about $100,000 over the next 5 years to continue the program that James Luer has been doing, where he has been moving a lot of the locks out. You can notice the boardroom, the conference room, And he's slowly trying to put in door controls instead of keys, because it's very expensive to rekey. So, estimated cost over 5 years, not to replace everything, but to maintain and add about 15 cameras, is about $325,000. This does not include a visitor management system. So after the bond is done this summer and they reroute the people through, if you want, or if we need a visitor management system, the cost of this isn't included. So.
Like a badge system, like when a visitor comes to the,
Yep, I think they scan the driver's
Didn't we
license.
put that into the bond itself, the funding for that?
Some of the funding,
Yeah.
yes.
So that would be,
Yeah, some of these fundings
it's
costs
tough.
should,
Yeah, or kind of,
yes.
Visitor management is not part of the bond.
It is not, no.
what?
Oh, is that part of it?
I do not
Visitor
believe it is,
management part?
but don't quote me on it.
No, that's more of a, I mean, when he's talking about that, yeah, that's the program of like scanning your driver's license and it checks
Oh,
the
not just
security
the
background.
camera
No.
outside? No, okay.
We are adding a camera in the vestibule. Yes. But the visitor management side is.
That's like an actual thing.
Yeah, so that
Right.
will most likely be something that will be addressed in the future. And it doesn't include a server replacement for the Avigilon system. All right, I'm gonna try and move forward. Cybernet and internet, our endpoint security, which is mandated by insurance, is costing us about $7,000 annual. That is one of the leftovers from that breach when they said you shall do this forever. Phishing programs, we're currently spending about $6,500 to help prevent the phishing emails which created the breach, or is partly responsible for it. Staff development training, I threw that in here, which is about $1,500 annually-ish. And that's district-wide, all employees. Google for Education audits is about $4,000. I like to do that every other year, but the $1,250 is an annual fee, and that gives us access to training and help and support and et cetera. ECMEC can now do security audits and such for about $10,000 annually. However, FR Secure was doing it for us for about $18,000 every other year. So the cost is a kind of a wash, depending on how friendly we want to be with our local service cooperative. The internet, we just signed a new 5-year contract with them for $12,408 annually, which is actually a bit cheaper than last year, over the last contract, so we were able to talk them down. And hotspots, we were paying about $12,000 a year for hotspots, but we've been dumping them because COVID is over, and it's an expense that we just can't afford. And then just lastly, so you know, we own the line between the middle school and the high school. If you walk out tonight and look up over the top of your head, you will see like a telephone line go down and cross the bridge and go to the high school. We pay Zayo about $5,000 a year to maintain that in case the line gets broke. And like when they replaced all those telephone poles, that stuff was moved with it. So that's Zayo that helps us with that. Firewall services, I recently purchased a new firewall for the district, which past practice had us using a much more expensive firewall. But the firewall services, I figure average about $5,000 a year, and that's to keep the bad guys out. The device itself is $16,500, and that should last at least 5 to 7 years, but we have the subscription services for all that to feed it. And then just a side note, I threw the web hosting in here, which has been costing us about $8,500 to run the school website and auxiliary sites. So the total is about $305,000 over 5 years, and this really doesn't change much. Innovation, this is something that I threw in here because I believe in it. So I guess you could say this is a new thing, but it's not. What I'd like to do is at least set aside $20,000 annually, $400,000 over 5 years, and this allows the teachers to be innovative. My idea is that we have a committee. It could be DAT, it could be a staff development committee, it could be, you know, a committee that's put together. Teachers or people would apply, and then it would be reviewed by the committee. And if it fits within the curriculum and et cetera, then they would be awarded a small an amount. So that would help us with robotics, the art software. Art software currently runs us about $5,000 a year, which isn't in here. Athletics, STEM, etc. So if we need a new 3D printer, or if somebody wants to try out augmented reality, this would be an opportunity for us to be innovative and allow those odd things. All right, adding it all up, here's the bottom line. So over the course of all this time, it comes to be over a 5-year period, we're spending about $3.4 million, or about $700,000 annually, $679,000. That is based on current practice. Now, when I kind of go back and look at, gosh, we could have done it this way, and we could have done, and you go back and assess. In my head, I think we can get that down to about $560,000, which would shave, that would bring it to about 2.8 million, 2.7 to 2.8 million annually, or over the 5 years. Keep in mind, this does not include staffing. It does not include like the copier contract, which is coming up in the next year or so. This does not contain all of that educational software that we're using, the digital tools that you see. It does not pay for any of that. It doesn't pay for the fast bridge testing, and it doesn't pay for Infinite Campus or the Tableau. It doesn't pay for the SPED program, Smart Finance, etc. So this is just infrastructure type stuff that I'm talking about. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that the cost of technology is greater than that. So my upper budget would add an extra $200,000 easily to that. If I look at what I call the upper budget is managed services, when I have to call somebody out to help, when I have to buy ink for the stuff, the feeding stuff, the projector bulbs, the maintenance, supplies, repairs, postage, etc. That's not included. Just talk about those items that we do. So if you need more information, I'll be glad to supply it. Lastly, because of time constraints, I'm not going to go out how we're going to assess and evaluate all this stuff, but just know that we are in the collaboration and communication. So after we're done with this, I'll be sending the technology plan out to the staff and to the leadership so that they can review it and put in their 2 cents. And then, of course, sustainability. This plan strives to promote the sustainability that we need in our district. If we can't figure out a way to sustain what we have, the unfortunate reality is I got to shut something off. Or the second superintendent that I worked for 25 plus years ago used to tell me, if it's old and it works, then it's old and it works. So we may have to adopt that philosophy. So, any questions?
I have a question. So you gave us that total amount annually. Obviously, you already have money that you use annually. Is this $679? Is that in addition to what you? I mean, what's?
Nope.
So, what is that an increase of what you would say you spend annually, and how much of a bump do you think that is?
It's a very good question, and it's semi-difficult to answer because, for example, if an Infinite Campus costs us about $40,000 a year, but they're putting it in the school supply budget. Not all of it, Tableau goes someplace else, and messaging has gone someplace else. So it gets to be an adventure sometimes to find where over the years there was a need, but all of a sudden they found that there was this budget line that had some extra money, so they threw it in there. So one of the things that Mr. McNulty and myself have been working on is to put the stuff where it belongs in the budget so that we can have better transparency. And we've been working hard at that so we can see that number. To answer your question, currently I would say that that number is about $250,000 less than what I have to work with. And then I'm going to put a little asterisk on it and tell you that my E-rate dollars, my federal grants, are done in 2025. The COVID dollars, where a lot of my budget was shifted to, like that Aristotle K-12 and the Chromebooks and the staff laptops, poof, that's gone. So the reality is that that number is not what we have. I'm guessing that, to be honest, we probably need at least 500,000 a year somewhere. Maybe it'll be a wonderful big sale. So maybe a grant from Infinite Campus. So I've told them that I'm willing to have, in their lunchroom, they have a beautiful lunchroom with big windows. I'm willing to stand outside with a sign. So, anyway, that's, if you're asking for my gut opinion or gut feeling at a number, right now I'd be looking at about the 500,000 mark. And again, that does not include the staffing costs and those auxiliary costs, which add up. Okay?
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments or?
I have a question. Just a clarifying question, because I get confused as to whose budget and who's accountable for what, and how it all fits together sometimes. So like, for example, like in our outdoor spaces, like if the scoreboard and the pinwheel goes down,
That's
is that,
athletics.
okay, so that's in the athletics budget. And then the same like with all of those lights and things like that are
That
out
would be
there?
maintenance.
That's maintenance. Sounds good. I didn't see any of that in here, so I was like, whose bucket is that in?
Doesn't reflect
So,
that.
okay, so
But
those
the
are in
new-
other
the
people's
network
sources.
that
Thank
we're
you.
going to install up there.
Yeah, that's on, yeah, got it, understood.
And
Thank
the
you.
security and such that we have.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Any other questions?
and again, please refer to the technology plan that's on that site that I told you.
Appreciate that.
Because it will tell you the focus points, which will hopefully make this much clearer.
It's really good.
Yeah, thank you for putting that on the district website. It'll be nice to review.
And then just let me know how you want to proceed, or if you need additional information and clarification, so we can hone it down into a more understandable, transparent, honest evaluation.
Like, just from, I won't jump into too deep of a conversation, but just as I think about this, if we are gonna start to fall off of a cliff from a technology perspective, will our finance committee be talking about this in some sort of a detail? Do we need to be thinking about a work session at some point in time, understanding what that cliff is, and if we need to be planning for anything differently around a funding source?
Just to give perhaps a little additional clarification. As you know, COVID hit.
Yeah.
There was COVID dollars, and a lot of my funding was shifted to COVID because it was there.
Right.
Which then released the funding that I had in the past. They moved it for other stuff.
Right.
Some people talked about tonight. Well, the COVID and stuff, then my funding was taken out. And this year I had to go over budget because these things are contracts and I have to pay them. So this year I'm looking at, I'm really gonna be close because I've been super conservative and I didn't do my extra things like my audit, my security audit, the follow-up audits and other things that I have some control over so that I can stay within my clip. But with E-rate growing up and those other funds going, the fact that a lot of the budget was shifted and hasn't come back, I have been working with Mike and Rhonda and people, and they've been very helpful. But we're at that point where our expenditures are going to exceed, and we are at that point where we're not going to be able to replace. And that's just the reality of our game right now. So it's no reflection on anybody, it's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're like readjusting to the real world, I guess.
And I appreciate the overview, and what we'll have to do is figure out what our needs are going forward after, right? Replacements, and if we do need to ask our community for assistance for large-scale replacements and updates, or just,
Yeah.
I don't wanna say maintenance, but maintenance, so.
we're at the peak of where we're at.
Yep.
And if we are unable to continue, again, it'll be, if it's old and it works, then it's old and it works. And if it breaks down, then we'll just figure out plan B.
Well,
That's gone in my business for 25 plus years.
And we'll look forward to those recommendations coming from yourself and the rest, so appreciate that.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you. All right, moving on, Ms. Dean, there are several staff handbooks up for information. We'll start, so I don't know if you want to go through all of them individually, or if you just want to give an update for each item.
Well, given the time this evening, what you have in front of you, actually the next several agenda items are the parent student handbook, the Greens handbook, the middle school handbook, the high school handbook, Galaxy Early Childhood, and these are all first reads. And so they're in your board packet, and so if you have an opportunity over the next, of course, 30 days to take a look at it and make some suggestions or thoughts, or just get a grasp on what some of those changes are. There is a summary of the main changes, and most of the changes are related to dates and things like that. There are some changes, of course, with our meal section, given the recent legislative action to provide universal meals. And so that was a significant change, if you will. But otherwise, if you have an opportunity to, of course, review each handbook over the next 30 days and provide those suggestions, we'll come back for a second read next month.
Excellent, thank you very much. Anyone have any questions for Superintendent Dean on the handbooks? Very good, then we'll move on to 8J, policy second reads. Superintendent Dean?
Yes, did not receive any feedback from anyone on these board policies. So this is the second read, and we'd like to take board action on those. And be able to move forward with updating those policies in our on our website and other places.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Any, I know you've been involved heavily. Any comment, or are you good? Very good? All right, thank you for that. With that, the second read of these policies are on for item 8J. I would appreciate a motion to approve the policies that are presented to us.
I'll make a motion to approve the policies as presented.
And for the record, that's 516.5, 750R, 801, 802, 805, and 806. Thank you very much. There's a first by Ms. Praska, second please.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Nealon. First and second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. With that, that does bring us to the end of the business portion. And if our administrators wish to leave, please do so, except for the superintendent.
Can I motion for like 2 minutes? 2 minutes? I just.
Motion for a 2-minute recess. Can I have a second?
2 minutes.
Second?
So sorry.
Race, yeah.
Second?
Second.
Second, for a second.
I'm gonna go stand outside the door
Approval?
and provide my.
Say aye. Aye. We're in recess for 2 minutes until 9:32.
I had 5 minutes. Otherwise, it would be early on your time. Pause.
Yeah, let me do that.
No, it was exactly.
All right, I will call us back to order at 9:31. Even early. It's on already. All right, going into their board and superintendent updates and announcement. The next work session of the board will be Monday, May 15th, 2023 at 5:30 in the district office boardroom, followed thereafter with the regular meeting of the board, 6:30 in the district office room. Then we will move on to committee board updates. Ms. Praska, could you please provide your update?
Sure. Mine is all about C. I went to the one in Cokato, the smaller regional one, and I gave.
Oh, you did? Oh, good.
Couple weeks ago. So I gave Courtney a little info to put in the Google Doc for C, if it's anything that you'd like to read one night when you can't sleep. And of course, we all know it's a hot mess downtown right now with everything moving forward. I had a legislative committee meeting today, and they are thinking, they anticipate the omnibus bill being settled within a couple of weeks, which would be nice. And what did he say? Let me think. It's probably, nobody on the legislative committee supports the unemployment, moving forward with unemployment pay, but they're also, when he brought that forward to the legislators that are on that committee, they said that, well, why didn't anybody testify against it? And which isn't true. Lots of people testified why it would hurt. So that'll be interesting because there wasn't any support for that. So Brad will go forward again and say how that's bad. And then he asked if we would prefer, I wish I could have called y'all up because he said, well, would you like 5 and 5? Or would you like 5 and 4? Or would you like 5 and whatever tied to inflation? I'm like, well, it all depends on what mandates they push for. Because if every mandate goes through, even 5 and 5 won't. And this is what's gonna hurt us. If we get 5 and 5 and they push all the mandates forward, the paper and the public are gonna think we got this huge, never before funding. It's gonna look like we have all this money, and when we go forward for negotiations, when we wanna do another referendum, people are gonna think we have all this money because they don't understand all the things coming out the backside. So we would have to be very diligent and verbose in crafting messages to let everybody know the truth of the financing. So she is very aware of it and moving it forward, but.
Well, just another comment related to that, and what happens because of the unfunded mandate, many of them are administrative mandates, which requires then more administrative support, and that is a bad look because, you're hiring, clerks or secretaries and not classroom teachers, even though it's because of the additional workload,
And most of the schools that were on the meeting today said what they would have to do is rewrite their contracts for, it would become a year-round position for some of them. That might work for paras, but it's certainly not gonna work for our bus drivers. So it's just, there's gonna be a lot of changes that would have to happen if that goes through. And then as far as the literacy one, they think the House version will pass if you keep up on it. I did raise a concern. My concern is, of course I want it to support, I want it to go through, but I'm concerned that right now the government gives millions of dollars to the University of Minnesota. And then University of Minnesota would also be the vendor. So you have to do this, you have to buy this from us, and then we circle around it. So it's a little bit of, I'm not real comfortable with that relationship.
That's terrible.
And so I raised that, like, at least have a menu of vendors that's not just the University of Minnesota. Because we fund them as a public institution, but now they're also a vendor. So do you see how that's, why I raised concern with that? And then, side note, and this is not Beth Kraska's words, this is the C person's words, that unfortunately the lunch that went through is actually funding the middle class and upper class, not the lower class. So I never really thought about it that way. I'm like, so when people don't want to say a referendum, have their taxes go up, say, well, you did get $600 in free lunches, and they're not free, but So he was trying to talk about verbiage we could use because you are getting this, even though it's not really a tax. So anyways.
Thank you. Any questions for that?
And I wasn't at the community high school because Jake had a basketball tournament. So, just saying, that's why.
Ms. Hillstrom.
I just attended, right before this meeting, the World's Best Workforce meeting. We talked about a couple of the World's Best Workforce goals, specifically the ones relating to all kids can read by 3rd grade and what we're doing to prepare them for their kindergarten ready. So we talked a little bit about that. It was interesting. We got some back and forth with some community members about some verbiage of the goals and stuff like that. So, and Brenda Nyhus shared some things that they're doing at the elementary school to help reach those goals, and then Principal Warzeka also had a slide that kind of showed some of the things that they're doing, mostly around like SEL type stuff, the character strong type stuff that we talked about today. So, and then other than that, I guess the work session. And then the other things were more individual. The community expo I went to, that was fun. I went with one of my sons. We got to do the bingo card. That was fun. And I also attended a second grade choir concert, and that was really fun. Principal and I, again, made a comment there. And as I was watching the concert, I noticed it, and I was like, is that normal? They didn't have a piano play at all. Like, they had nobody keeping the beat for the second graders. They were just singing on their own. It was amazing. They didn't get lost or go, way off tempo or anything. It was really good. I was really impressed. So it was fun. It's awesome.
Excellent. Any questions? All right, Ms. Johnson, I know you're writing, but I'm gonna have you call you out anyway.
Yeah, let's see, after our last board meeting, I met with Rhonda, I attended Masico meeting, Community Expo. That's about it.
Excellent. Thank you. Ms. Nealon?
Well, since I was puking my guts out during our last regular meeting, I haven't been here since February for a regular meeting. So I had superintendent interviews. I'm just kidding, I'll start in March.
You can report all those, it's totally fine.
Oh, superintendent interviews.
Because they technically need to be.
Okay, so superintendent first interview, superintendent second interview. Finance committee meeting, the first one. CE advisory meeting. The bond sale call and the rating call, that one. And I was at the expo for work, and then I got to tool around a little bit as well on Saturday. I'm still doing Safe Routes to School, although it wasn't so safe last week.
I heard.
But at least none of the kiddos got hurt. And I didn't get hurt.
You didn't get hurt.
Nobody got hurt. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Excellent. Thank you. Ms. Edwards?
So, had a handful of board prep meetings, I think 3 between the work session and then a couple for this one, with Eric and Rhonda. And then facilities committee meeting, as well in April. And the main topic for that one was, with the decision for the flooring, to go with what we have, but a thicker flooring than Melissa Joseph and Dan Pratt were also present at the meeting to talk about then what, right? Like, what do we want the flooring to actually look like? Like, is there going to be a track in it? And if so, is it be this color or that color or whatever? And really, we're leaving it appropriately to Dan and Melissa to really think to what it should look like.
What
Yeah.
they need.
Yeah, exactly.
What
And so
lines
the
do they
takeaway
need?
from that
Yeah.
meeting was, obviously, super excited that we, as a board, we committed to some enhancements to our buildings, and they're excited to be able to now imagine, and we challenge them to reimagine what that space should be and what it should look like, and even similar to what we just heard from our technology team, update, like, past precedent doesn't mean future practice, and so, truly think about that space as you're open, what do you need, and then design the floor to support that versus what we've always done. And so I think, I haven't seen it come on the books yet, but we'll have another meeting where they'll bring us back an update. Dan was gonna meet with some of his coaches that use that space a lot. Melissa's gonna have conversations with some community users that use that space a lot, and between the two of them, come up with their plan, appropriately so, for the use of that space, and if other things need to get moved around or curtains need to get figured out, like, again, we'll be talking about that in the future, but, so it's good. It's fun. I'm excited for them to really, again, create that space and
I'm excited
have
for
it
the
be
community.
really good for
Have a
everybody.
good
It will be
space.
good.
Yeah,
It will be
so,
good. Excellent, thank you.
yeah.
And I will echo a couple board prep meetings, couple conversations with Rhonda about direction of at-will contracts, about, just bouncing up some questions. The flooring color meeting that we had, I was really interested in color, as you all know. A guy would be, right? Just kidding. But anyway, so, and then AMSD Board Director Chat conversation, the April Board of Directors meeting with ASCD, or not ASCD, sorry, wrong group. I don't remember
AMSD?
who it was. Yeah, AMSD, sorry. Too many letters. And that was, I've had several conversations with Tim from Northwest Suburban, who's the HR director at Elk River, setting up interviews for Northwest Suburban Executive Director.
Yeah.
So, and how we can make sure that our stakeholders for that group are honored. So that's, and that process starts, I think, Wednesday. We have a meeting started. So that'll start there. Ms. Dean.
Yes, Chair Gordy. Attended my standing meetings, which include the weekly LTFN meetings, the AMSD meetings, Wright County Superintendent meetings, Northwest Suburban Integration School District, resource training. But also this month, met with union leadership. Try to meet with them every other month, and I'll circle back around to that in just a moment. But addition to the standing meetings, have had several meetings, of course, with ICS and PMA as it relates to this final step in the bonding process. Participated in the rating call. That does seem longer than a week ago, but anyhow. Attended the indoor track meet that we had a couple of weeks ago. It was great. The kids were awesome, being in that confined space. And I think there were 6 teams there. But the kids just did a great job at managing themselves, and again, managing themselves in that space. Because if I remember that day, it was kind of cold and rainy out. So they were literally kind of confined to the space. Met with the union negotiators prior to them presenting the intent to negotiate formal documentation, just to talk about a few things that they had on their mind. Attended the foundation board meeting last week, and the principals and teaching and learning and technology was there, able to share with the foundation some of our big asks, if you will, things for them to consider in terms of funding for our various schools and departments. We also had our district calendar planning committee last week, and that's when all the program leads, including music and athletics, we actually came in here in this room and just pulled up the district calendar for next year and just kind of put everything on the calendar, conference nights, open house, band concerts, choir concerts, so that there was no conflicts. The wild card, of course, is always athletics, because we don't know how far we get. As a matter of fact, we went into that meeting last week with not knowing when homecoming is going to be in the fall. Dan said that by now we would know our homecoming date, and we don't. So that's interesting, and I don't know why Minnesota State High School League is so delayed in I guess printing their fall football schedule, but we don't know at this point. Of course, attended the expo this past week, and it was great. Attended World's Best Workforce and several board prep meetings. The only other thing that I'd like to mention is I've had several meetings over the past month with payroll. One of the things that you'll see, actually tomorrow morning, is we'll be sending out a communication district-wide about adjusting our payroll calendar to align that with, Jenny, you're giving me that look. So there are some bargaining groups, or, bargaining groups that are paid on different, right now we get paid on the 15th and the 30th, and we're gonna shift that to the 1st and the 15th, and we're gonna shift it to the 15th and the 30th. Because what's been happening over the past, I don't know how long, but individuals have come into the district and we actually pay them in advance of them working. And so we are going to change that. And we're gonna change that over the course of several months. And those months will start July, August, September, again, addressing the different units, the 284 units, the hourly unit, the at-will, the teachers. And so over the past month, I've had several meetings with union representation. They actually had a union meeting this evening prior to this board meeting, where I guess they discussed this matter. I also discussed it with the negotiations folks when they came in, but really working with the principals and the directors so they can also communicate out the why behind this change. And we're gonna be launching that tomorrow morning. We're waiting for the union to have a discussion with their membership. And again, that happened this evening. And so we will notify staff what that calendar looks like. And again, these changes won't come into effect at the earliest, will be July, and that will be primarily for some of our at-will and principals. But the other bargaining units will be impacted, if you will, over July, August, September. And again, we have put a schedule together to just inform those folks what that's going to look like, because there is going to be a gap in order to make this happen. Jessica?
So that's what I was gonna ask, like if they got paid the 1st and 15th of June and then you get to July, they're not getting paid for an entire month.
Correct.
Not till the 15th of July and 30th of July.
Correct. So for instance, just to make a simple example, when we hired an administrator, July 1st, they got paid July 1st because they get paid on the 1st and the 15th, even though it was the first day.
I don't understand why you just don't pay them on the 15th.
Exactly.
Well, that's what we're going to do.
No, but like, why change the, I don't know.
Yeah, they,
Doesn't,
like why wouldn't their first paycheck just not come
Until the-
July?
until-
Because they divide it out by 12 months is what happens, Amy, is they divide it out by 12 months.
24 checks.
Or in 24 checks, so
Correct.
that's why.
So we just have to shift it. It's just a matter of shifting it, and the most important piece is just making sure all
Everybody
individuals
understands budgeting wise that they make sure that they understand
Correct.
when
That
they're.
you will
that
have
there'll be
there
a
will
gap
missing
in
paycheck.
July, August, or September. We will have a gap.
They still get the money, it's just gonna
Correct.
be delayed, and there'll be a nice big paycheck then.
Correct.
No.
Whereas
Well,
mo-
it won't be,
It'll just be
it'll
shifted.
It'll be after
it'll
the
be
fact instead of
the
before
same
the fact.
paychecks
Yeah.
moved like this.
And then is it going to be the last day of the month or the 30th?
It'll be the last day of the month. I said 30th, but it's the 30th, 31st, 28th if it's February. But the 15th and the last day of the month.
First and
So again, you'll see
And
that
after you
go
work, so you have to work 2 weeks before you actually get paid.
Correct.
Imagine that.
I know, I'm like.
And again, it's legacy accounting. But it's one of those things that we do need to fix that.
Okay.
So,
Any other questions for Ms. Dean? All right. With that, we are at everyone's favorite call for adjournment. Like a motion?
So moved.
Johnson, second. Hillstrom, first, second. All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 9:50.
I have signatures I need from you two, and then I need to have you just fill this out, and then drop it back off once you're done. You should have had you fill it out when you first came onto the board.
Okay.
All right. You have a lot of things to sign.